Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm Jeff Gerstmann. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. Weird how that works out. And we're here to talk about the week that was in video games, the week that is, the week that will be. Then, now, for... Yeah, okay, yes. What is up with wrestlers? It's a question that's been going around. Why are wrestlers so fucking stupid? The question on everybody's lips. What is it about wrestlers that makes it seem like that they are the ones that seem to be falling for or buying into conspiracy theory stupidity and tweeting out links to... I'm just asking questions about Sandy Hook, about, you know, like all... What is it about the professional wrestler that seems to make them... I think, and yes, of course, people are saying, oh, yes, they get hit in the head a lot, they get concussed. Like, sure. But I think the life of a professional wrestler, and it's probably a little bit less like this these days, but I think you still have some that they've got that dog in them, where they are in a constant state of paranoia, right? That's the professional wrestler. It's the independent contractor that works for the one national company that is worried constantly that they are going to get, fired or pulled, So as a result, they are paranoid about everyone and everything around them, and nothing is real, but everything is real. They live in a life of lies, and so at some point, they spend enough time in that wrestling bubble that everything becomes a work. Politics, like top to bottom, they're like, oh, it's a work, brother. Like that's the vaccines are a work, brother. Like all of that sort of stuff. I think that they're conducive. They are willing recipients of conspiracy-like information because they live a life of rumor and innuendo and all that sort of stuff, right? And I think that there are a lot of professional wrestlers that are not like that now, and it's better for it, despite what the Undertaker may have you believe about these damn kids playing video games backstage. But yeah, I don't know. There's always going to be 1 or 5 or 20 coming out of the woodwork with some insane shit, and you're just like, oh, that's okay. You're a fucking crazy person. Okay, you believe in absolute insanity. Okay, you spend all your off time believing in absolute lies. Great. Okay, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Professional wrestling never change. Actually, please continue to change. Like I said, it's not quite as bad as it used to be, but there's just something about it. I don't know why it seems to attract people that are. About that life, about that conspiracy theory life. Yes, as a big Damo, as the former Killian Dane said, some wrestlers are just fucking stupid. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Yes. I guess that's just how it is sometimes. Sometimes they'll show up for a match with COVID and try to dodge the tests until the last possible minute and then fuck up a show. Like, yeah, It's a wonderful world out there. Hey, but enough about that shit. Video games, huh? Or technology, I suppose, in the delivery of video game information from me to you. That has been the kind of constant pain in the neck around here for at least a little while, and it has been a push and a pull here with my computer and the old OBS, the old open broadcasting service. Open broadcasting software. That's what that stands for, right? I've completely forgotten what OBS stands for. Yeah, it's been ongoing. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I maybe have found another pocket of things that were causing issues. And so I uninstalled all of the NVIDIA SDK stuff that allows for the weird warped backgrounds and shaders and all of that sort of stuff. I uninstalled Stream Effects because it's a beta version that only works like there is no official version of Stream Effects out that works with the current releases of OBS. They're all alphas and betas and all that other stuff. So like, maybe that's another thing potentially causing an issue there. So I removed all of that stuff, and then it ran fine last night. I don't know. We're in a real weird scenario here where it will the software will run for hours at a time just fine, and then like the next day it'll just freeze up at a moment's notice. And so I don't know. I have a backup prepared here in case things go bad. I almost went with a backup anyway today, just for a change of pace and all that sort of stuff. But I kind of want to keep hammering on this and see if I've fixed it. But yeah, it's definitely been, it was another Monday spent uninstalling stuff and reinstalling stuff and trying to figure it all out. And I think the next step at this point, though, there's another beta of OBS out this morning. Because at some point I upgraded to the beta of the next version of OBS, thinking like, well, maybe it's a problem with OBS 28 and this video card. Maybe I need to move to the next version. And so it's rabbit holes upon rabbit holes over here as we uninstall and reinstall everything over and over and over again. But so the two things I would try next is I will install the new OBS beta. I'll probably do that one way or the other after this stream is done. And if this locks up at all, or if I ever see it lock up again, then we're reinstalling Windows. That's really the next step. I saw someone that seems to be having the same problem I think it's only if you're running a Windows Insider build, but maybe not. There's a feedback app that comes with Windows that you can give feedback on anything, even if Microsoft doesn't make it. Even you're like, hey, this is fucked. And if you right click on something in the task manager, there's an option there that just says give feedback. And so I opened that up, and it opened the feedback app. It opened because it looks for the process that you're clicking on. It goes like, oh yeah, OBS. And it's found like one complaint from a guy running OBS going like, yeah, this thing just locks up. Nothing in the logs at all. It just locks up. I'm like, hey, that's me. That's me. OBS just locking up and not leaving anything in the logs. That's what's happening to me. And so I left the note and said, that's happening to me as well. But he thought it was an Intel problem. I'm like, I have an AMD CPU. So no, probably not. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe it's the part where we're running insider builds that's a problem. I'm trying to think like, okay, when was the last insider build update? So if you're not familiar, they do it on the Xbox as well. You can go ahead and run pre-release versions of Windows 11 all day long. They've got 3 different tracks you can be on. One is like the safe little, like, it's the next thing that's going to come out to everybody, but you get it first. And then there's the next one up that's like, hey, this one's a little further out, and it's usually fine. And that's been my experience. I can think of like one case over the years where there was something very much that was absolutely, yes, 100%, because I was running an insider build, it was fucked. And other than that, it's been actually rock solid. Unless this experience I'm having right now is related to that, in which case, fuck it forever. But and then there's the one that's like, this one's the furthest out, and the stuff you're going to see in this might not even ever ship. This is where we're just fucking around out here. And I looked at that one, and right now it's like, hey man, we changed the way the search bar looks. It's rounded. What do you think? Do you like it rounded, or do you think it should be squared off? What do you think? It has this real like fuck it, we're just doing whatever out here on that one. So I'm not using that one because that's too crazy. The Xbox One has had a similar architecture of like, you can skip ahead to the next version of the Xbox dashboard software and all. I'm going to keep this hand out here, just keep doing this about the different tiers of things you can do. It's a good workout, honestly. It's working from home. Not a lot of opportunities for not a lot of accidental exercise of like, running back and forth around an office and all that sort of stuff. I used to get a lot more steps when you used to track steps. I used to get a lot more steps in during the day. Now I gotta manufacture some steps. So yeah, but anyway, the Xbox will do that, and I am in some weird, because there's always like, oh, I want to preview the next version of the dashboard because I want to be able to talk about it on a podcast or whatever. When they're previewing major updates, like that's the only way to get it, and so I've opted into that years ago. For that very reason of like, oh, the next version of the dashboard is being tested, so we need to, let's take a video of that or whatever it was. Yeah, no, yes. Then now the at-home workout I get is actually much more up and down, off the floor, on the floor, and carrying around young sacks of potatoes who sometimes are wriggling and trying to get away from me. My son, who is now, I believe, 14 months, because time is like that. He turns. I'll hold him here, and then he will try to turn all the way around in my arms. And he does so by putting his elbow directly into my throat and pushing on it to make the turn happen. And that's unpleasant. My daughter doesn't always like to be carried as much as she used to. She's 3.5 now, and but she definitely wants to be picked up, and with her I pick her up and we dance, so like I'm holding her arm out and we're dancing, which is fun. So yeah, a lot of like pick up put down kid related workouts, but not nearly enough of that, so I should actually get an actual sack of potatoes and carry that around for most of the day. But anyway, so yes, it's been it's been a lot of like figuring out things to try on this software issue, which originally I was getting things written to the event log about, video card driver problems and all that sort of stuff. That has been sorted out, and now it is a more mysterious problem that is leaving no trace of anything in any kind of log. So I'm not sure what to make of it, really. But we're getting there by, like I said, by uninstalling all of the plugins that would do anything more extreme than just run a stream. That maybe that'll be one of the culprits here. Yeah, Wycross in the chat says, is the problem actually OBS or the new GPU? I mean, that's that. Yeah, I mean, originally I was like, oh man, is this a big GPU incompatibility? Is there something? Do I need to rerun the power cables to the video card or something because there's something going on there? Or, but I fixed that part of it, the part where the video card driver was crashing over and over again, whether OBS was open or not. That we fixed that weeks ago, and by weeks ago I mean I guess like technically 2 weeks ago. So that part is fixed, and I was like, great, okay, we fixed that part. We're moving on. Everything's fine now. Like, oh no, and it's not. It's now OBS is just locking up at random. So it's hard to say. A lot of software has not added good, well-tested updates for the 4090 and the 40 series cards in general. And there are a lot of cases of people going like, yeah, we I forget what it was. Maybe it was Handbrake or FFmpeg or something like that. But it was some video. It was some package for video conversion and doing AV1 encoding and all of that sort of stuff. And they were like, yeah, we don't really have any of these cards to test on. So we've got theoretical support for this stuff, but we have no idea. So if anyone wants to buy us one of these cards, but like, with the cards being hard to find and super expensive, like, yeah, there's not a ton of software out there that is well tested on them, which I suspect is something that is dribbling over into games at least a little bit. With some of the things we've seen lately. We'll talk about that when we get into the news. But yeah, PC ports got weird there. Anyway, that's pretty much what's been going on over here in terms of making things work, making things happen, and moving some. I unplugged one of it's one of those things where you go like, I probably don't need 3 webcams plugged into the same machine. That seems like something that, like, if you told me, hey, I plugged in 3 webcams into a machine, I'd be like, did it break all the time? That would be the question I would then ask. So, like, I unplugged one and that didn't fix it. I probably don't need 3 plugged in because I'm gonna take one of those out to the garage and start to set up a garage stream setup out there anyway. So that'll be fine. I don't need the oldest of the 3 webcams is not necessary. I do need one of them so I can log into Windows with my face. Originally, I was like, oh, I bought this vlogger camera and hooked it up to a cam link, and look at me, I'm all fancy and focus, and hopefully in focus. And everything's great. And then I was like, oh right, it wants my face to log into Windows, and so I had to plug in my Logitech, my old webcam. I had to plug that back in. With the depth camera and all that sort of stuff. So it would go like, yep, that's your face. You can be on Windows. And I'm like, yeah, it's faster to type in the pin key sometimes, but not all the time. I don't know. It's only a pain in the ass because it getting from, like, if it's trying to see your face and you're like, no, I want to type in the pin number, getting to that point takes a little bit of time because it spends a lot of time looking for your face. I like that they called it Windows Hello. It's not just the webcam thing. It's like all part of the like login process. Like Windows Hello. But you usually like, hey, I'm sitting down at a computer. I'm looking at my phone still. I'm pushing the space bar and glancing up here, and it's logging me in. And by the time I'm ready to compute, it is logged me in, and it's all done. So I think it's kind of cool. The whole face. The faces are cool. Am I right? Anyway. Facing worlds is cool. It's a shame we're not permitted to see it anymore. But, what are you going to do? Epic's too busy paying $500 million to fix Unreal Tournament. So, so it goes. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back. We'll talk about video games. It's a bold plan, I know. But let's do it right now. Backing up your data and staying secure isn't just for the tech-minded, crazy people in your life that are out there building dedicated machines and figuring out how to do this. You can do it too. And you know what? You can do it for just $7 a month with Backblaze. With Backblaze, you take that $7 a month and you get unlimited computer backup for a Mac or a PC. You can back up whatever, music, photos, videos, whatever projects you got, documents you got, all that sort of stuff will just get backed up automatically. Here's how it works. You install the Backblaze app. You can configure a few light things about it if you only want it to back up at night, or, so if you want to exclude certain folders and just really focus on backing up specific stuff, you can do all of that too. But really, you just install the app, let it run, and it'll back it up. And then you don't really have to think about it until something goes wrong. Let's say a hard drive fails. Let's say your computer gets up and walks away. You can log in via the web, via their app on phones, and get at your files. They will zip them up and send them to you right then and there from the web, and you just download them all easily and restore them where they need to go. All that thing is just ready. It's super easy. And it just, it's a good peace of mind. But if you're backing up a ton of data and you need to restore a ton of data, they'll even mail you a hard drive, or a thumb drive, or, whatever you're trying to restore. They'll send it to you. You copy it over to your machine. You send the drive back to them. Bing, bang, boom. No hassle. No worries. All of your stuff is there when you need it. And if you need some extra retention history, let's say you're working on crazy projects and you need an old version of it or something like that, you can increase that retention history to 1 year for an extra $2 a month. Backblaze has restored over 55 billion files for customers. That's a lot of bad hard drives. What are you going to do when your hard drives go bad? Huh? Check out Backblaze. They've got a free, fully featured, no credit card required trial. You can go to backblaze.com/Jeff and let them know by going to /Jeff. Go to backblaze.com/Jeff so they know where you came from. Again, it's a 15-day, no credit card required free trial. You can mess with the service, mess with the app, see how it all works. All of that. Get a good look at it and see how it fits into your life. It's fit into mine for years now. And I've got 2 machines that I'm backing up with Backblaze, and I've had multiple hard drive failures over the years. It's been nice to have the peace of mind that stuff is just sitting there waiting for me should I need it. And I have. I'm like, oh man, this drive, there's like 8 terabytes of data I need to get back. And boom, I can get it. I can restore it. It's back. It's where it needs to be. It's there. It has worked wonders over the years. Again, don't lose your data. You need it. You know, whether it's old photos or, tax documents, levels of importance. Maybe you're running a small business. You're going to need to retain a lot of weird data if you're running a business. Take it from me, someone running a business. There's a lot of stuff you're like, I should probably hang on to that. Hey, Backblaze can hang on to that for you. Get that 15-day free trial. It's just $7 a month after that. No credit card is required for that trial. Again, go to backblaze.com/Jeff. It's just $7 a month. Oh, and then never think about it again until something goes wrong. It's there. It's happening. You've got that peace of mind that your data is secure. Okay. Let's talk about Street Fighter 6 again. I love this fucking game. I am in love with Street Fighter 6. I want to keep playing it. The beta, I believe, is done. I think they have shut it down as of this morning. And it is fantastic. I have had such a good time with it in the 2 weekends that they have, run this beta. And then, I saw it again a previous time back in June when they were kind of first unveiling it a little bit. And oh man, the only thing in the beta is online play, and there's like loose ways to kind of get it, the training mode and some of that other stuff. But really, since it's a beta, they're trying to test the online, they're trying to figure out the lobby system, they're doing all that sort of stuff. So it's not the full game. I think the stuff they've shown in the trailers about what the rest of the game is looks enticing, but only because having played the beta and seen that the foundation of it, the core of it, the part where you punch motherfuckers in the face seems incredibly sound. I'm a Luke fan, and that dude sucks. He just looks like a jerk. He looks like a dick. He looks like it just looks like he super sucks. I would not want to hang out with Luke, but I am having a great time playing as Luke and just getting online and playing against strangers, and really I'm trying to take it a little, I'm trying to take it a little more seriously, which is what I said when Street Fighter V came out. I was like, I'm going to pick a character and stick with that character and try to get better. And it never happened. I don't know. I picked Ryu, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like normally I play a lot of Ken, but like let's pick Ryu and try to get serious about this. And I don't know. I don't know what, ultimately I think I would go on to say, I just didn't like Street Fighter V. Street Fighter V was a game that, like, prior to release, when you see the systems in action, the V-trigger, all that sort of stuff, you go like, okay, these systems look interesting. I don't know how they'll pan out in full online play, all that other stuff against other humans. Here, because they've been running betas and I've been playing with people and fighting strangers a lot earlier in the cycle, I'm warming up to those systems, the way that they built the meter, the way you can overdrive your moves off a different meter than your super charges off of, and the way if you burn all your meter out, then you enter a burnout state, and there are different properties that you have to deal with when you're in burnout, and all of that stuff is really cool. And I'm not even sure really how to use it yet. If you hit both heavy buttons, what is it called? Drive impact. And it's just basically, it's a flashy little basic attack that has armor on it. So if people punch you while you're doing it, you will still continue to do the move unless they hit through enough of the hits of the armor to knock you out of it, or they throw you or something like that. It's not like purely invincible. But it becomes this very easy thing that, like, right now I mainly see people using it to get into or out of a corner. Like they're either trying to hit someone who's in the corner to get them to, hit the wall and be ready for more combos, or they're hitting it to try to get out of a corner. They're like, fuck, I need to not be in this corner. And it seems like it has more uses than that. If you want to use it to set up your supers and all of that, obviously that's a way to use it as well. And some players I fight use it more than others. I don't use it that much because I'm just not used to it. And I haven't really worked it into my arsenal, I guess, as it were. But I think all of the systems are really fascinating to use and engage with, and the core fighting just feels good. The core fighting of it, the moves themselves, the way the combos come together, the speed of the game, the way the impacts look, like all of it comes together in a really magical way of just like, man, everything about the way this thing feels, I'm really liking. I'm really enjoying it. And I didn't expect it. Like looking at it early on, I was like, this seems cool, but how these things always go. Like, I'll play it for a while and then just get my ass kicked over and over again, and that'll be that. But like, I'm finding so far that like I am, like right now there are enough people at or around my skill level playing is probably the thing. So if that dries up, that's a problem. But in going into ranked and fighting people and all of that, it just there's you're finding different fighters, you're different players using characters differently. There's no settled upon like this is the right way to play this character and you're going to see this. And maybe once we start seeing more and more tournaments with the game where people go like, oh wow, I just saw a guy play as Luke and he did this and this, and now everyone's going to be doing that because they think that that's the meta, that's the esports, that's make it happen. And so maybe that will end up impacting, homogenizing play styles a little bit, but it just feels like characters have options and characters have a lot they can do. And it just, I don't know, it feels more expressive, I guess I would say, than some of the Street Fighter V stuff did. I'd be really curious. You can go in and watch replays, and I did go in and watch some of the higher level replays to see like what are these higher level players doing. And I didn't find any like known names or anything like that, so maybe that would be the difference. But like I went and found people that had played enough ranked to be, gold, silver, or whatever, and watched some of their replays, and I was like, okay, like the stuff they're doing doesn't seem like it's that different than the stuff that I'm doing. They are just better at it, and they are better at the mind games around it. They're making smarter choices than I am making, So like, it's this feeling of like, that's, you could, I can see a through line from how I play to how some of these other people play and go like, I might be able to do that. I mean, if I had enough time, I could maybe do that, but it's probably a lot of time, and there's a lot of bad lessons and a lot of bad habits that I would need to unlearn from decades of fighting games to truly like streamline and truly like optimize the way I play. And I don't think that's an option for me, and that's not really that interesting to me. It's like I would like to be able to hold my own and win and win 50% of my fights and not get blown out all that often. Have like close battles that I lose are super fun in that game. Like not pulling one out, but pulling one out is like awesome as well. You're like, oh, I can't play. Oh, that fucking, and so many of the fights I had came right down to the wire of just like, okay, it's round 3. Like we're both out of fucking life. And oh, I pulled off this and got it done, even though I was like one hit away from losing, like stuff like that. I'm coming away from losses feeling good about what I did and also seeing the cases where I fucked up. And that's something that I don't think that's a change in the game per se. I mean, the game being like slower and a little more readable definitely helps with that. But I don't know that I'm necessarily going to say like, oh, the game is so much better at teaching you what you're doing wrong. Like it's not. I think I'm just like, I'm finding the game more readable overall, and I'm using that and I'm finding it slightly easier to interpret the matches. And like I'm able to come away from a match and go like, here's what I did and here's what I need to not do. to not make that mistake again. Like it's clear mistakes. And it's in also situations where you're just like, okay, I was completely outplayed by that person. They adapted to my style faster than I was able to adapt to theirs, and I didn't have an answer for. Like, you see that stuff, and I'm trying to be better at that end of the game. And that end of the game's always existed. Again, that's not something that's like new and unique to Street Fighter 6. There's something about whether it's the quality, like just the fun I'm having with the game is making it me more invested, or if it is, again, like the speed of the game, the readability of the game is such that you can, like, I can already watch, these other replays from players who are significantly better than I am and see what they're doing. And know, like, okay, they jumped in, they did this, they didn't jump in. Number one, they didn't jump in. And this was a good time for them to use this. They were ready to catch this and throw this person when they tried to pull this shit. And, and so you see, not patterns, but like you see the behavior emerge. You see, like, okay, this is the behavior of like, these are the things you need to be able to react to. These are the things you need to watch for. And then different variations of that come your way from player to player, because each player is going to be better or worse at different facets of the game, right? And again, I know this is fighting games. Like, what I'm saying is in a lot of ways, every single fighting game that exists is this. This is the ladder you have to climb to improve. But there's just something about this game that is making me want to do all that. And something about this game feels like it is there with me, holding my hand ever so slightly, and making that ladder, you can see where the rungs are. It's not a complete mystery. Whereas, like, take, for example, like a Dragon Ball Z fighter, Dragon Ball Fighters, or for me, like any Marvel versus Capcom style game with launchers and air combos and tags and all the other stuff. When I watch that, because I haven't spent the time in those games or enough to, I've played all of those games, but that just looks like a fucking mess of just like, oh, then this character jumped into this, then this, and there's bits and pieces of like, oh, I know how to do that individual move, but I have no idea what they did in between it and what they hit and what they did this. And, instead there's all that stuff is just fucking nonsense of just like, oh, I don't know, we did a fucking red Roman cancel and then jumped up and we did the high jump here and fuck, man, what? Street Fighter 6 feels like it is appropriately grounded in a way that means that players who have not played all of those fighting games can still potentially compete at a level, not at, not main stage Evo, whatever, but like the idea of just like, no, I can compete and have a good time in this. And even in the situations where I've just been, had people perfect me, like I've come back from that and won fights where they perfect me in the first round, and I come back and win the next two and shit like that. Like so even just when in situations where you do get blown the fuck out, you go like, okay, I guessed wrong every single time. Every single time there was a decision point, that person made a better decision than I did. But yeah, I don't know. The systems and all that sort of stuff, there's a depth to them. There's still stuff in that game that I actually don't understand, and you don't see it very often. Like you can cancel into a run and stuff like that. There's little things around the meter usage that I'm not sure where or when you would use them, and every time I've seen someone use them, it has not worked out for them. So I there's individual little things in that game still that I'm still like, I don't get why you would use this. I hope it would have a nice tutorial. I think that would be cool if if it was something that they were good at teaching people how to play the game. Because that's always one of the hard things. But whatever, we could break it down a zillion different ways. I think the short version is I had a fantastic time with it over the weekend and have had some really close fights and had a lot of fun winning and losing. and the other characters are fascinating to look at and try to dissect from the perspective of what would Luke do here, and finally starting to come up with answers to that question that are not just like low roundhouse. I think it's low roundhouse, because that is working way less than it was early on. But yeah, I'm having a tremendous time with it. It feels very grounded. It feels very attainable, I guess I would say. So I'm very much looking forward to that. It's not out until June, and I hope that they do some additional beta stuff between now and then. I would love to get another shot at playing it, and being able to see some more characters and stuff like that would be cool too, because this is content wise, I think this was pretty much identical to the previous beta that they ran. I think they were just running it again. So I think they're really testing out netcode and servers and all of that. I don't think there was any balance change or any kind of actual gameplay content in that thing that was any different. So we'll see. I will say, I think I ran into one Ryu the entire time I played this time. Last time out, I ran into some more, but like I did not see a lot of Ryu players this time out. Saw some Kens, not a lot of Lukes. And yeah, I'm loving it. I'm having a great time with it. I hope that the final product lives up to that and all that, because that would be, yeah, I would love to spend a lot of time playing this. I don't know. We'll see. And I love how shitty Luke is, if that makes sense. He seems like a piece of, he seems like garbage. He just seems like a fucking douchebag, I guess. There's really no other way to put it. And using his level 2 super where he just goes beast mode, baby. You're like, oh god, he sucks so much. Luke just sucks so much. But he's fun. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. He's a lot of fun to play. We'll see. The Street Fighter 6 beta also coincided with, I think, the first double XP weekend for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It's a weird, the relationship that the Call of Duty developers have with their fan base and the ways that they get them to engage with the game and the strings they pull to get people to play the game more is always a little weird. This time it feels like it's coming more from a position of strength than maybe it was in the past couple of years, where they've rolled out the map Shipment, which was a favorite map in Call of Duty 4. It is a very small map, and so it is absolute chaos because you are all on this small map just killing each other over and over and over and over and over again. And so it is a situation where you spawn, you kill somebody, and you immediately die. Then you spawn, you die again. You spawn, you kill 2 people and die. You spawn, you kill 4 people and die. It's just, for a game that's already like relatively fast paced, this is just ridiculous, like chaos mode, I guess. And so when you take that is a map where the rounds happen quickly. You get a lot of kills. I mean, sure, you die a lot, but you are getting a lot of XP. And so that leads to a situation where people go like, well, I want to earn a lot of XP because I am trying to level up my guns. I'm trying to unlock all the attachments. I'm trying to, prestige over again and all that. And so then you combine that where they've got a button on the menu that just says play Shipment 24/7, and it's just that map over and over again in like 3 different modes. But really, it's, it doesn't matter what mode you're in, it's gonna get the job done. And then they combine it with double XP. And so now you're like, okay, well, I really want to level up these guns and unlock all these attachments so that I can configure these guns the way that I want them to, so I can unlock my fancy gold camos and whatever else. And that led to me playing quite a bit of that fucking insanity over the past few days. The double XP weekend part of it is over, but the map is still there. And I leveled up like 4 different guns and 4 or 5 different guns. Like it's a situation where like if you're doing well and you can't, like I was getting 7 and 8 kill streaks in some situations without dying, and that was fun. Where you're just like, oh, I happen to spawn in the right position and all these guys are looking the other way, and I'm just like bink, 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 and that's 4 kills. And then I walk around the corner and they've respawned and I go bink, 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 and then I'm calling in 3 jets to fly over them and kill a few more of them. And you do kind of get on those runs, and that is thrilling. And yeah, so I don't know. I ended up leveling up a bunch of fucking guns the rest of the way. Like there's stuff that I had used elsewhere that I was like, oh, I just need 4 more levels on this. But there were situations where like if you go on a good run, you're actually taking a gun from like level 1 to level 16 or something in the course of one game. And just that combo of the double XP plus shipment being available makes it all happen. And so there was a part of me was like, I should level up every gun during this double XP weekend. I could get it all done. Yeah. But no, I couldn't do that. At some point I was like, I need to stop playing this. This is absolutely stupid. They've used it in the past, and there's a couple of maps like this that they can pull the trigger on and try to it's like they can get I don't know if they're like sometimes they need to get their engagement numbers up or whatever. This time it just feels like it was a natural part of the cycle of them releasing the game. But I feel like I remember in past years, and maybe it's just because the quality of this game is better and that's why I feel that way, but was it in Cold War or was it in the year before that? But it was a situation where they're like, oh, hey, shipment 24/7, or shoot the ship is back. It's shipment and it's shoot house, and you can get on here and they're explicitly saying, get on here and grind out the rest of your camos. Like they're inspiring you to say like, yes, engage with the game in like a way that like it wasn't necessarily intended to be done, but also we totally intended for this to be an option. Where it's like, oh, we want to boost the numbers, and so we rolled out this playlist for people that want to like obsessively grind out the rest of the progression stuff. And it always in the past it always felt kind of dirty. This time it does. It's also still feels dirty, but it's a better game than the last couple, and so it's still sort of fun. Yeah, I don't know. It's I ended up doing a handful of that and getting a bunch of these guns up. And yeah, there's other stuff. Yeah, there's a weird Rocket League knockoff in there that I haven't had time to try yet because I had to level the guns. But I want to try that out as some kind of 3v3 on ATV's soccer thing. And they sold soccer skins. Like I don't know. There's still a part of me like I don't like soccer. I don't know if you know that about me. I think it's weird that people like soccer now. And there was a time there that like the only people I knew in this country that liked soccer were either looking for a really good excuse to drink early in the morning or they were just fucking pretentious as fuck. Or they're actually British, like, hey, like they actually grew up with it and they're British and, like, hey, awesome. Like, and I'm not talking shit there, but you'd have guys like, I'm going down to the pub to watch the football match. It's like, shut the fuck. What the? Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. You want to be drunk at 9 a.m. I get it. But I guess I don't know what happened. So people like it now. People like soccer, not the way they like, football. But I don't. Yeah. Again, I don't know what happened. I think that before these Call of Duty soccer players ended up coming out, I think I could name. There were 2 soccer players. 3. When was it? I was trying to name soccer players before these Call of Duty things came out, and I think I hit upon Pele and Mia Hamm And then someone in the chat said David Beckham. And I was like, oh, right, yes, David Beckham. He was a soccer player. And now now Call of Duty has Paul Pogba, and Messi, and there's another guy. I forget who it was. Maybe it's David Beckham. I don't know. I don't know. Soccer. And now it's in Call of Duty. Feels wrong. No, I don't know. And also the new season of Destiny 2 started. Hey, listen. I love Destiny 2. Every time I play it, I come back to it and go like, God, this game's beautiful. I love the art. The shooting feels great. And the progression is often enticing. But also, I rarely have the time to really put into it to truly see my way through an entire season's storyline. And so I have played the beginning of a lot of seasons and then gone off and either played the stuff from a previous season or just, whatever's in my quest log. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll do that. Is it part of the current season? I have no idea. I don't know. And so when a season starts, though, they load you into the introductory mission for that season. You play through that, and then you find yourself back on your ship or back in some social hub or wherever. And then it kind of sets up the next thing. And as someone who plays the first mission in a lot of these seasons and then goes around and jumps around and does a handful of other things and then falls off the game and comes back to it 3 months later or whenever the next season starts, the formula is exactly the same every single time. Where it's like, okay, you've got a mission, and it's a good mission. It sets up and it's the story, and it's like, oh, Jesus, the war mind. We got to fix the war mind. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to go find my grandfather, who, by the way, is a robot, and we're going to ask him to help us fix it because I've trapped it in one of these D20s over here. And we're going to put it back into the war mind. Remember the war mind from the other game? It's a satellite. But also it's an AI. You remember the war mind, right? You're like, okay, yeah, the war mind. Yes, the war mind. Of course. Let's go. And then you run through a bunch of tunnels and it looks awesome and it feels great. And then you're talking to this giant robot head who's condescending about, oh, you need me to help you fix the war mind, huh? Well, fuck you. But I'll help you. But also fuck you. Like, okay. And then it dumps you back onto the ship, and then the giant head he's transferred himself into a smaller body, and you have to go talk to him, and then it shows you the exact same menu that it showed you the previous season that you didn't understand there. It was in the previous season, and you didn't understand it there, and it's all the way back like last 9 seasons where it's like, okay, you can, if you level up this faction rep here, you can focus your engrams to get specific items, but you need to do this, this, and this to do it. And we're not even going to really tell you why you want to do it. And next season, there'll just be another thing that's exactly like this that spits out even better items. So don't worry about it. Like, it just feels like the same upgrade path every single season. Like, I feel like I'm staring at the exact same thing where it's like, okay, I can focus these engrams into specific weapons or items if I go get these materials. And now the materials are different this season because it's the season of the Dawning and not the season of the Pirate Man. Or, when I go to my ship, there's a giant fucking pile of gold there now, and that's got a little computer on it that pops up another one of these menus from 3 seasons ago or 2 seasons ago. And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck this is. There's nothing in that game that tells you like, hey, here's what all this shit actually is. And so I think the gameplay part of that path, the trajectory of how these seasons work in terms of, okay, as you complete these things, you're going to get these materials, and then you go back and use them at this station to get the items that you want to get, is basically it. But it just looks the menus look identical from season to season. It's just like it's like, oh, now it's different materials, basically, because it's this season's materials instead of last season's materials. And I get why you would have those sorts of things be duplicated from season to season, but again, I can only imagine what people who play this game to completion every season must think about this stuff. But as someone who just comes in, and that's literally the only part of the game I'm seeing is that first mission, and then getting to that menu, not having any of the shit because you're at the start of the season, so of course you don't have any of that. You're like, okay, I need to get out and get it. But then I got like 20 things in my quest log, and I just pick the one that seems the most interesting, and then that turns out from being like 4 seasons ago, and then I'm getting currency for that exact menu, but 4 seasons ago, and I don't even know where on the ship I need to walk up to find the terminal that lets me spend those upgrade currencies, because it's like, it's a mess, man. It's really crazy. It's really crazy. And I wonder, like, I'm sure if you play the game more regularly, then you know where all those things are, and you've probably done all of that. But every season feels the same to me. Obviously, the stories change, and a big part of what I like about Destiny is the world and the lore and all of that sort of stuff. But I at some point, you're just like looking at it and going like, I don't get why this is the same season in and season out. But the last time that, it was not this season, I want to say it was maybe last season, if not the one before that, is when they did a bunch of subclass changes and a bunch of gameplay tweaks to the way your characters are built and configured and all of that. And I thought that was awesome. Like, the changes they made there were fucking rad. Like, the way that game plays now compared to the way it played a year ago, at least as speaking as a Titan, because I think Titans got it last. It's cool as hell. And so that game feels even better than it did. Like, I think that the weapons feel great. They look awesome. The art in that game, I think, is just the whether it's textures and logos and visual design, there's just so much cool shit in that world. And even just like basic, like I was playing the first mission of this season that's out now, and I was just like, even just like running through a normal ass corridor in some facility, I was like, man, this looks so fucking good. This looks like such a cool fucking place. It's great. But yeah, like that aspect of the game, like again, as someone who is, I guess I would say, a relatively casual Destiny player, all of it seems like nonsense. Removed from that, like, the new content is the new content. You're like, oh, well, it's great running this place. It's, hey, let's see these cool looking cutscenes, and there's awesome shit happening. And then they're going to put out their big expansion in, like, what is it, February or something like that. And so that'll be presumably a big deal. But like with this one, I went and talked to the robot, and he showed me the menu for this season, and then immediately he was like, go talk to some lady, go find a terminal where you can talk to a hologram of this other lady. I'm like, okay. And she comes up and she says a bunch of stuff that I've completely forgotten what any of it means or where it's going. They almost need this is something that God of War Ragnarok does, if I remember correctly, right? I think Horizon maybe did it as well. It was like this, like there's a button on the menu, like last time on God of War, and they give you a bit of a recap on what the fuck happened in the previous game. I think that's something that just, a basic, like, here's the state of the world right now, in case you forgot, because you played through the main campaign and then have fucked around for, the last 2 years and not finished anything. The introductory cutscenes that are part of the season, like, do try to set the tone for what's happening right now, but there is still like a how did we get here kind of thing. I don't know, like, as these games go on, I wonder, and again, this is something I've thought about Warframe a lot as well, even more so with Warframe, because I feel like Warframe has just been nonstop nonsense since it was launched from like a story perspective. Like if there's a character on screen talking, is there a button I can hit to say, who the fuck is this? And why are they here? I don't know. Like, there's probably not enough players like me out there to be worth doing that work. That's the kind of the thing I keep coming back to is like, oh, they probably would do this if there were more people in my specific boat, but like maybe there just isn't, and maybe that's why no one does this is because they're catering to the people that have been there all along. But like, yeah, the I don't know what the fuck. I never knew what the fuck was going on in Warframe. I have played dozens of hours of Warframe. And I have no idea what any of the factions are. I don't know what I am. Am I a human that goes inside of these Warframes? I assume that I'm some kind of character that goes inside the Warframes, right? That's what they wouldn't call them frames if it wasn't something I put around myself, right? I wouldn't be able to change frames, or am I a consciousness that gets beamed into them? What the fuck is a Grineer? Warframe? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, absolutely inscrutable. Always has been. But I don't know what the fuck. In Warframe, there's a terminal you can go up to on your ship that's like, pledge your allegiance to one of these factions, and then the other factions will hate you, but you'll grind rep with this faction. I'm like, okay, well, which one of these is cool? I went with the one that seemed the coolest. And I'm like, I don't know if there's a downside to this, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. So Destiny is at least maybe a little bit better at being grounded in some kind of story than Warframe seems to be. I played a little bit of Warframe earlier this year, as one does. Return to Warframe and go, this plays fun, but I have no idea what to equip or what I've got or where I'm going. I ended up on a rail jack and it got stuck, and then it locked up, and I quit. And I don't know. I love. Long story short, I love Destiny 2 in terms of the way it looks and plays, and I do wish that the lore was a little bit more. Well, I don't know. Like I'm sure, again, if you are a person who plays that game as they intend people to play it and actually complete the tasks that they deliver, then I'm sure that it sticks with you. But again, as someone who plays, let's say, 20% through a season and then falls off and plays like other past seasons, like I'm playing 5 different seasons of content at the same time, and all these different storylines are happening. I'm like, I don't know what any of these people want. This guy stands in the snow and he's a bug man, and he tells me to go out here and do this, and then I unlock stasis, and there's it's like, go visit the Exo Stranger, and I'm like, okay, I've done that like 4 times. Let's go back out and visit the Exo Stranger. And then she says something, and I go, okay. And now I have to. It says, go get 50 kills with no time to explain, or and I'm like, okay, I assume that's a gun. Is that in my inventory? I don't think it's in my inventory. Do I need to go get somewhere to get it? Or no? I don't. Okay. Well, this quest is going to rot in my inventory for a good long time then, until you decide it's archive content, and then it'll automatically be taken out, and I don't know what the fuck will happen. Yeah, I don't know. We live in a time now where even there's a part of me that wishes I played more Destiny 2, but there are so many other games that I'm trying to play on a regular basis right now and / always that I'm just never going to be the sort of person that can devote myself to one game for longer than a few months or something like that, Like right now I'm playing Call of Duty every night, and that feels weird. It feels weird to be as into that game still as I was when it launched. Not that it's like particularly old or anything like that, but like the progression systems and all that, I'm like, hey, I'm still having a really good time with this. I'm going to keep playing it. And again, that's something that I would have predicted that I would have stopped playing that game by now, but I have not. If anything, I'm like, I am reading patch notes. I am keeping up on what the fuck's going on in Call of Duty the next week. What are people complaining about now about Call of Duty? Because there is still a lot of weird shit. They took the heavy helicopter out of Warzone because people were just getting in this big helicopter and just flying high above and not fighting anyone until the last circle, and basically trying to outlast everyone without having to fight. And so at some point they were like, yeah, all right, we're going to take these helicopters out until we figure out what the fuck to do with them, because this is not fun for anybody. But there's so much weird hidden shit in Call of Duty, and this is something I will probably never do. But you can set off a nuke in Warzone that ends the game. Much like they have had nukes in the past, they have done that, but done it as kind of it's almost like a hidden thing, or so it's somewhat better hidden than it has been in the past. So in Warzone, I guess what you have to do, and I may be a little bit wrong on this, but if you win 5 Warzone games in a row, it enables something called the champion Warzone, champion whatever for your team. And so you go in, and there are other things. Basically, there's a nuke contract on the map. You go get it, and what you have to do is you have to go collect 3 items, bring them back to a location, and then once you have all 3 items there, you can arm the nuke, and then you have to defend that spot for like 2 minutes, and then it blows up the entire game, and you win. Which is a really insane concept for like, hey, to get to this point, you were the last team alive to extract on this helicopter, and now you've got your champion's victory by nuking yourself and everyone else. Like, yes, congratulations for killing yourself. You win. It's just a fucking insane concept. But as you collect these items around the map, it will do things like, when you collect this, it'll scramble your radar. When you collect this, it puts a tracker on you so every other player on the map knows that you're trying to do the nuke thing. And so they're like, well, we all need to go here now and try to fucking stop them. And so you've got 5 teams camping the fucking nuke, and you're like, well, I don't know how we're going to get in here, but I've seen videos of people doing it. It's insane. And so I like that they found a way to work the nuke back into the game, because that was something that, obviously has existed in the past. But I will never see that. I will never win 5 Warzone games in a row to even probably attempt to do the whole nuke thing. But it just conceptually, from a logic perspective, the entire concept of the Warzone and battle royales in general is fucking ridiculous. So I guess there's that off the bat. But the idea of congratulations for winning 5 matches in a row. Now we're going to give you the opportunity to commit suicide, but take everybody with you, just like you always dreamed. Yes, let's go. It's just fucking crazy. I don't know. It's just fucking weird, man. Let's take one more break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the news. I don't know if you heard, but Fortnite, they had to spend, it's not that much money, but Epic had to give a bunch of money to the government, I guess, which is probably past due. And then they tried to spin it as a good thing for them, which is, of course they would. But let's, we got one more ad here. We'll come back and we'll talk about that. Are you tired of trying to figure out what to do with food scraps? You can just throw them in your regular garbage, but if you're like me and you've got kids around the house, there's a lot of food scraps. There's a lot of half-eaten beefaroni. There's just there's a lot of it these days. And as such, the garbage gets disgusting. Maybe you can put it down the sink, but then it's you're clogging up your thing. You turn it on, it goes, brrr. Whoops, you stuck a spoon down there and that broke in half. That happened the other day. Got a spoon down there and it broke in half. It was no good. Now, there's another option without having to keep a weird heap out back. There's Lomi. You can use Lomi to turn that food scraps into dirt at the push of a button. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns scraps to dirt in under 4 hours. There's no smell when it runs. It's quiet, and you've got less garbage. Less just food mess that you're slopping everywhere and leaving out back in the garbage cans where I hear it's squirrels, but the raccoons, all this other stuff are trying to get into your garbage, get into your food scraps, all that sort of stuff. Just get it out of the way. Turn it into dirt and then sprinkle that dirt wherever. I don't know what you got. Flowers you're growing. What you growing food out back? You got strawberries or, just fun plants. You got a lawn that maybe just could use some nutrient rich dirt. Well, hey, that's what the Lomi generates. So sprinkle it around, huh? You can get that Lomi right now and start making a positive environmental impact. Or, just Just make cleanup after dinner easier, you know? Hey, Lomi might be perfect for you. Head to Lomi.com/Jeff and use the promo code Jeff to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to Lomi.com/Jeff and use the promo code Jeff at checkout. Food waste. It's gross. Lomi is your solution. With the holidays right around the corner, Lomi will make the perfect gift for someone on your shopping list, huh? Check it out. Lomi.com/Jeff. Get $50 off when you use the promo code Jeff. Thanks to Lomi for sponsoring the episode. Okay, we're back. Let's get to the news. Fortnite is in the news. This is a headline from the old FTC, the fighting tame community. Am I right? The Federal Trade Commission. They say Fortnite video game maker Epic Games to pay more than $500 million over FTC allegations of privacy violations and unwanted charges. This is a violation of COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And for that, they will pay $275 million. And for tricking users into making unwanted charges, they will pay $245 million in refunds. So that's $275 million penalty for the COPPA stuff. And that's $520 million in all. So yes, this is the FTC has secured agreements requiring Epic Games to go through with this. And this is okay. So there are changes here, and Epic is issued something that gets into some of these changes. They actually made some of these changes before this stuff was announced in preparation for this announcement, I'm sure. Epic will be required to adopt strong privacy default settings for children and teens, ensuring that voice and text communications are turned off by default. Under a separate proposed administrative order, Epic will pay $245 million to refund consumers for its dark patterns and billing practices, which is the FTC's largest refund amount in a gaming case and its largest administrative order in history. There's a quote here from Lena Khan of the FTC, whose name has been in the news around the Microsoft stuff, the Microsoft Activision stuff lately. As our complaints note, Epic used privacy invasive default settings and deceptive interfaces that tricked Fortnite users, including teenagers and children, protecting the public and especially children from online privacy invasions and dark patterns is a top priority for the commission, and these enforcement actions make clear to businesses that the FTC is cracking down on these unlawful practices. If you haven't heard of dark patterns, this is basically situations where, like, on this menu, we swapped the cancel and purchase button from the previous menu, and you pushed the cancel button, but really it was the purchase button, and you bought some, and this dark patterns are something that websites use to, like, it's the reason why when you go to cancel a subscription, the yes, cancel my subscription checkbox is always way shittier looking than the no, keep my subscription light up box and all that. Those are just some very basic examples of very lightweight dark patterns, but that stuff exists everywhere. It's fucking terrible. It's absolute shit. But it is legit everywhere. Once you start seeing it, you will never stop seeing it, and you will realize just how nefarious the internet has become in terms of, like, web design that is designed to lead you down a very specific path. So Epic is going to be required to change those default settings and basically have some different settings for children and teens and all of that. Epic is I'm still reading from the FTC's press release here. Epic employees expressed concern about its default settings. As early as 2017, Epic employees urged the company to change the default settings to require users to opt in for voice chat, citing concern about the impact on children in particular. Despite this, and reports that children had been harassed, including sexually, while playing the game, the company resisted turning off the default settings. And while it eventually added a button allowing users to turn voice chat off, Epic made it difficult for users to find, according to the complaint. And so some changes have been made. They have rolled out some children accounts and all that to try to clean that up. And this is stuff that, obviously, like when they're on consoles have actually been better about this than Epic on their own on the PC, and I'm sure on phones to a certain extent in terms of how they do it, where like, a manufacturer like Microsoft, they have had the concept of like a children's account for Xbox Live for a very long time. And so if you were already on one of those, then you would probably be restricted from buying V-Bucks as easily. Charged account holders without authorization they've got a whole section in here about illegal dark patterns. Children and other users who play Fortnite can purchase in-game content such as cosmetics and battle passes using Fortnite's V-Bucks. Up until 2018, Epic allowed children to purchase V-Bucks by simply pressing buttons without requiring any parental or card holder action on consent. Some parents complained that their children had racked up hundreds of dollars in charges before they realized Epic had charged their credit card without their consent. The FTC has brought similar claims against companies such as Amazon, Apple, and Google for billing consumers millions of dollars for in-app purchases made by children while playing mobile app games without obtaining their parents' consent. And then a separate bullet point here, blocked access to purchased content. The FTC alleged that Epic locked the accounts of customers who disputed unauthorized charges with their credit card companies. Consumers whose accounts had been locked lose access to all the content they have purchased, which can total thousands of dollars. Even when Epic agreed to unlock an account, consumers were warned that they could be banned for life if they disputed any future charges. Yes, that's when written that way, that does sound super shitty. Epic ignored more than 1 million user complaints and repeated employee concerns that huge, in quotes, number of users were being wrongfully charged. In fact, Epic's changes only made the problem worse, the FTC alleged. Using internal testing, Epic purposefully obscured cancel and refund features to make them more difficult to find. Which sucks. That's a shitty thing for them to do. And when you see it written out like this by an entity that isn't necessarily in the game, I think when we all spend so much time with video games now that, and if you don't see it either through a child's eyes because it's happened to you, or if you're not seeing it kind of written out in black and white like this, it's easy to forget that this stuff is done this way, and it's easy to just like go like, oh yeah, well, I don't know, that's just games. And like it shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be. Especially a game like Fortnite that is making so much. I think someone did the math, and this is like 30 days of Fortnite revenue that they're being fined. It's not even that much in the grand scheme of things. But yes, by not notifying parents or obtaining consent, there were definitely like kids under the appropriate age that were able to play Fortnite and spend money and all of that. And so they've been knocked for that. Epic then put out their own press release, which is in some ways, reading this made me feel gross. In other ways, I wanted to kind of clap and be like, wow, this is, if you've got to write a press release about this stuff or some kind of blog post, you sure did find a way to try to spin it as a positive. Over on epicgames.com, they have Epic FTC settlement and moving beyond long-standing industry practices. And basically, they're taking this as an opportunity to say, like, we're changing and everybody needs to do this. We're leading the way on not being shitty about this. It's just... And so instead of saying, hey, here, there's an aspect of this where they talk about what they are doing, but they frame it as developers should do this. Game developers should absolutely do. Yeah, this is what games should be like. And it's really crazy to read in the context of reading what the FTC put out and going like, yeah, Epic agreed to this, but employees complained about it internally for years. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that sure sounds bad. And then you read this and you're like, all game developers should rethink steps they've taken to simplify payment flows in favor of practices that provide the largest amount of clarity to players when they make purchase decisions. Saving payment information by default is a common way to streamline the checkout process so players do not have to re-enter their payment method every time they make a purchase. We've agreed with the FTC to change this practice, and we now offer an explicit yes or no choice to save payment information. Pushing a button to complete a purchase is one of the most commonly used and easiest mechanics to complete online purchases. Games should go above and beyond to make sure players even more clearly understand when they are making a purchase with real money or with virtual currencies to prevent accidental purchases. We don't want players to pay for something that they did not intend to. Since May 2018, Fortnite has had a refund token system and an undo purchase system, but now we've gone further because the government didn't think it worked well enough before. They leave that part out. We've updated our payment flows with a hold to purchase mechanic that reconfirms a player's intent to buy as an additional safeguard to prevent unintended purchases alongside instant purchase cancellations and self-service refunds. There are many ways players may seek to refund purchases. Developers should consider avenues for players to request refunds that lie outside of the standard process. If a cardholder sees an unauthorized transaction on their statement, they may report it to their bank to have it reversed. When that chargeback is initiated, it is common industry practice to disable the associated account as a fraud prevention measure. We've updated our chargeback policy to account for non-fraud related scenarios and will only disable accounts when fraud indicators are present. We have restored thousands of accounts that were banned due to reported chargebacks under our previous policy. And so, like, they're, you know, and I will grant you that, like, this, they're not wrong. Like, a lot of this is relatively industry-wide practice when it comes to in-game purchases and all of this, because you've got a lot of, especially on the PC, where you have developers pointing to their own storefronts and all of this. Again, when we're talking about these games appearing on PlayStation, appearing on Xbox, appearing on the Switch, you've got the platform holders storefront, and you've got a lot of that stuff that is sometimes built in a more obvious way of like, hey, you're about to charge a credit card. Are you sure you want to do this? And that. That's not to say that every Sony account is built with parental consent in mind. And yes, Sony in the past, I don't know if they still do this, they have banned you if you've done a chargeback. So it's not something that the console manufacturers are completely exempt from, but it's another layer of protection, especially when you think about sub accounts and child accounts and what have you. So, you know, I think that the clearest, cleanest offenders of this sort of stuff are the people doing free to play on PC, where they're creating their own entire payment flows and storefronts and everything, and not even going through Steam in some cases, where they're just like, yeah, I don't know, download the Genshin Impact client and yeah, just, I don't know, put your credit card in here and we'll have some fun. A few days ago, Epic rolled out what they are calling cabined accounts, and these are basically their version of the sub account, the child account, the whatever you want to call it. And they bill this as a new type of Epic account that provides a tailored experience that is safe and inclusive for younger players. Players under 13 or their country's age of digital consent, whichever is higher, will be able to play Fortnite while they wait for parental consent, but in a tailored environment where certain features such as chat and purchasing are disabled. While game developers may be familiar with COPPA, they may not be aware of its global application. COPPA is just one of the many regulations addressing children's privacy around the world, which are expanding to include teens. This means game developers should expand youth privacy protections to include players under 18. In September, we implemented high privacy default settings for players under the age of 18. Chat defaults to nobody, profile details default to hidden, parties default to invite only, and personalized recommendations are defaulted off. Players under 16 also have the mature language filter defaulted on for text chat. And so it's, Epic goes on and on about the stuff that they've done, but also here's the closing paragraph. The old status quo for in-game commerce and privacy has changed, and many developer practices should be reconsidered. We share the underlying principles of fairness, transparency, and privacy that the FTC enforces, and the practices referenced in the FTC's complaints are not how Fortnite operates anymore. We will continue to be upfront about what players can expect when making purchases, ensure cancellations and refunds are simple, and build safeguards that help keep our ecosystem safe and fun for audiences of all ages. So I'm flabbergasted by the absolute balls on this thing. Where they have been caught out in one of the biggest, if not the FTC said it was like the biggest sum in gaming that they have ever procured. And for Epic to write this in a way that goes like, hey, game developers, it's time to clean up your act. It's really fucking wild. But the thing is, like, they're not wrong. And also, Epic's position as, you know, Epic is something of a central figure in the game industry, right? They are running their own storefront. And so this could be positioned as like, hey, if you're going to be on the Epic store, you need to do this, this, and this. But it's not. They're not framing this as like new rules for games that must be on that can be on their storefront. Obviously, they've got their account system, and that will probably apply to the store overall and not necessarily just Fortnite. But I just the way they have written this in a way that is like almost admonishing the rest of the industry when this complaint is squarely aimed at them and at Fortnite is really something else. And I just want to say kudos to the people that wrote it, because it is like the audacity, just wow. You have found a way to frame this in a way that, like, you're like, we care. Whereas the FTC's complaint talks a lot about, again, employees complaining about this stuff internally and trying to bring it to people's attention and nothing changing as a result. It's the vibe of fucking like Don Johnson doing a drunk driving ad on TV. You know, it's like, oh, man, I got a DUI. I don't want to go to jail. I'm Don Johnson. What can I do? Well, you got to do community service. You mean like pick up trash? There's something else I can do? Yeah, maybe like record a PSA telling people not to drink and drive. Got it. I'm on it. I can get this done. Yeah. You shouldn't drink and drive. Take it from me, Don Johnson. Miami Vice's own. I'm and you know, I think that deep down on a human level, this is probably not who Epic wants to be. They want to be fair. They want to do all this stuff, but you know, it took the government coming in and twisting their arm and going like, hey, fuckers. Like, you are doing a lot of nasty shit over there to kids. They're like, oh, you saw that, huh? We think the industry should change. Like, okay. But yes, the industry should change a lot of this stuff. You know, this is something that running a website, it was something we had to think about and rework a lot of user account stuff and sort of data that was being collected, and a user, you know, there was like laws in the UK that require you to be able to delete a user's account completely with all of the data associated with it and all of that, and the rules around how that had to change led to a lot of engineering headaches. Ultimately, it's the right move. Like, it's one of those things, like, you know, like as being part of the company that's like, man, I really would like to get some fucking cool shit done, but oh, the engineers have to rework all of this account shit for the UK. Fuck. You pull back from that on a human level. You're like, no, yeah, this is the company shouldn't be allowed to fucking do this. Like, yeah, no, of course, actual humans should have these rights or some form of digital privacy. Of course, children should be protected in these sorts of ways. But I think it's very easy to get caught up in the company of just like, well, we gotta put Star Wars in here. We're too busy putting Star Wars in here to make it safe for kids. In conclusion, monetize teens. Respectfully. John Carmack is done with VR. It is the end of his decade in VR, as he puts it. He has been building up to this for a while, I feel like. You know, John Carmack at Meta, at Facebook, as their CTO, and then eventually their like consulting CTO, has been kind of complaining about the way Facebook is doing VR for a while now, in real kind of subtle and not so subtle ways. Be like, oh yeah, I don't know, we're talking about the meta. Like that was the last headline out of Carmack, I think, was him saying, yeah, everyone at this company keeps talking about the metaverse, and I guess we're working on that, but I don't think any of these fuckers know what that means. I don't think they're actually building anything that humans will use anytime soon. But they're sure dumping a lot of money into it. I don't know. Like he sounded like he was very much along for the ride. And, you know, he basically said as much. He wrote a long thing to Facebook opening with, "This is the end of my decade in VR. I have mixed feelings." Where he says, Quest 2 is almost exactly what I wanted to see from the beginning. Mobile hardware, inside-out tracking, optional PC streaming, 4K-ish screen, cost-effective. Despite all the complaints I have about our software, millions of people are still getting value out of it. We have a good product. And this was an internal letter to Facebook that I guess got leaked to the press, and so he just posted it to Facebook and said, here's what I fucking sent, because people were just taking little bits and pieces. And basically his big complaint is that the company is inefficient about how it's getting things done. If I'm trying to sway others, I would say that an org that has only known inefficiency is ill-prepared for the inevitable competition and or belt tightening, but really it is the more personal pain of seeing a 5% GPU utilization number in production. I am offended by it. And then he added a little aside here that I don't think was in the version he sent around. I was being overly poetic here, as several people have missed the intention. As a systems optimization person, I care deeply about efficiency. When you work hard at optimization for most of your life, seeing something that is grossly inefficient hurts your soul. I was likening observing our organization's performance to seeing a tragically low number on a profiling tool. So he's basically saying like, hey, this org full of people is running at 5% efficiency, and it sucks. It has been a struggle for me. I have a voice at the highest levels here, so it feels like I should be able to move things, but I'm evidently not persuasive enough. That's honestly weirdly relatable. A good fraction of the things I complain about eventually turn my way after a year or two passes and evidence piles up, but I have never been able to kill stupid things before they cause damage, or set a direction and have a team actually stick to it. I think my influence at the margins has been positive, but it has never been a prime mover. This was admittedly self-inflicted. I could have moved to Menlo Park after the Oculus acquisition and tried to wage battles with generations of leadership, but I was busy programming, and I assumed I would hate it, be bad at it, and probably lose anyway. Yeah, and then there's a little bit of rah-rah at the end of there, like, make better decisions and fill your products with give a damn to the rest of the team and all that. So he's done. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that if you look at the Facebook approach to VR, I could see being a guy like John Carmack, like this highly intelligent systems guy, and watching all this money get flushed down the toilet on the stupidest shit and being like, this is super not the way. We need to not do this. And having people go like, yeah, great, John, go sit in the corner and fucking, I don't know, code. We're over here changing the world, buddy. And eventually being like, fuck this. I can't fucking be here anymore. I can't fucking deal with these fucking idiots. I got to get the fuck out of here. And then one way or the other finding his way out. God, what a... I've kind of divested myself of, I think that, like John Carmack gets put on a pedestal, and I think that obviously a lot of that from a technical perspective is incredibly well deserved. His track record in gaming and engine building and all of the stuff that he has done is incredible. He has done amazing, like he has changed the world of video games multiple times over the course of his career. He has done astounding, amazing work, but I think that there is something lacking on the And this is just, I'm not going to point to anything in his message here and say this is what I mean, but like, I think over the years, there have been different examples of like the humanity of John Carmack or his ability to recognize the humanity of a situation, and maybe come up a little short in some of those cases, if that makes any sense. He's been a very technically minded individual. He's done, again, amazing technical work, and sometimes at the expense of some of the other facets of being a leader or all of that, I think. And so it's not surprising to me that he might not be the most persuasive person, especially at a company like Facebook, where they're just running on fucking, I don't know, huffing their own fucking farts, just like, like the metaverse is going to change everything, of course, like they're, because they've got to sell a message to Wall Street and all this other fake bullshit that is going to be offensive to a guy like John Carmack. I find that very relatable when people are selling fucking absolute bullshit out there to the public and you're the one in the bunker going like, this is fucking crazy. What the fuck are they asking me to be the fucking face of? This is terrible. Like that. Yeah, of course. Of course, a guy like that's going to be like, dude, fuck this. And eventually snap and get the fuck out of there. Like, that's only natural. And so he's done. And as he says, this is the end of his decade in VR, which is, I guess it's a shame in some ways, but I feel like, he's done so much for VR. He's done so much for the technology to help it get as far along as it has. And really get it off the ground. I don't think we would have, obviously something like the Quest 2 and something like the different kind of rendering options and the different technologies that they have used to optimize VR in a way that, makes it more usable for more people and the handhelds, the mobile solutions, the tracking solutions, all of this sort of stuff that I'm sure had some part in over the years. Remember, he was at E3 with a big, crazy, cobbled together thing that wasn't even like an Oculus device. It was just like, I don't know, this is a thing I built, and Doom and he had to do that lawsuit with Bethesda because when he went to go do Facebook and all that, he had worked on a bunch of VR shit kind of on his own time, but really on company time and all that. But he was at E3 with a cobbled together VR headset, showing it running, I guess was it Doom 3? No, what the fuck was running on it? I forget what he had running on it, but he had a VR headset and he was showing a game on it, and yeah, it was just a crazy, why is John Carmack giving demos of this insane? I mean, it's awesome, but is id gonna make a VR headset? And then clearly became like, oh, he left to go pursue the VR stuff. Him and Palmer Luckey off to go do the Oculus stuff and then the Facebook stuff and all that. So yeah, it's and he is now got a company called Keen Technologies, like Commander Keen, and he is working on artificial general intelligence. So he's basically got to back out of gaming. I mean, VR wasn't always 100% about gaming, but it was so gaming adjacent that you can still feel like, well, Carmack's still here doing it in some way, shape, or form. Like he's not, a part of the world's greatest first-person shooters or whatever anymore, even though I'm sure some of the code that he wrote probably lives on in Call of Duty every year, right? I mean, that was always the story, is that somewhere deep down in I think it was like the Demonware netcode stuff, that there was still some form of Quake World, the Quake World source. There were still some bits and pieces that maybe he had written all the way deep down in that. I don't know if that's still the case or not, but that was the story for years, is that, yeah, Call of Duty is still technically at its lowest levels, got a little bit of that id in it. And I don't know, that's always like weirdly comforting in a way. I don't know. Artificial general intelligence, obviously AI has been a controversial thing, and AGI has been maybe even more so. You don't hear about it as much. The idea of a general intelligence where they're looking to, this is maybe some hyperbole here, but like artificial general intelligence, from what I read of it in the wake of this, is like them trying to create a general intelligence, a general human-like intelligence that you can then query or talk to or whatever. And I don't know, that's cool and terrifying. Like a lot of the AI stuff, cool and terrifying. Terrifying is maybe not the word. It's cool and it's complicated. It is ethically very complicated, right? I mean, that's the whole thing with all of the stable diffusion and all of the image creation stuff being trained on an artist's work and an artist's images. Like, I went to the Chat GPT page not that long ago, and I asked it that I put this in the Discord one Saturday morning. We were talking about it, and I said, like, hey, go write an 800-word review of I think it was like Smash Brothers Ultimate with a negative tone in the style of Jeff Gerstmann. And what it came back with was not coherent as a review. Obviously it's Chat GPT 3 is meant to be a demo. It's not meant to be a full display. It's not meant to be some perfect thing, but it had enough of my different tics as a writer, of my, like, some of the ways that I structured a review. I could see it in there. And so you're like, okay, well, I mean, clearly in the way it read all of the internet to figure out how to write different ways, apparently it read a lot of my stuff, enough of my stuff to fabricate little aspects of it in ways that I found recognizable. And that's fucking weird. Now, I don't really mind. But if I were an artist and I was seeing stable diffusion able to crank out images that look like they were done in my style in a way that I could look at and go like, yes, this thing is not perfect, but it is making some of the choices that I would make here when you query it this exact way, that would feel shitty. Whatever. We could talk for another 2 hours about the complicated ethics of AI being trained on other people's work, and how that's, again, as you've got more and more people that are just going to use this to make money, that fucking Rick and Morty, the fucking High on Life has AI art in it that they just like, oh yeah, near the end we just generated some assets with it and put it in the game. Like, oh, okay. So you've already got examples of commercial use out there. You've already have a lot of companies that are looking to capitalize on this. There was the app going around where people were doing all their profile photos and paying like $3 a pop. And so obviously that's the end of it. That is the big problem, right? Where you've got companies in there waiting to exploit this stuff at the expense of actual artists and all of that, and go like, oh, well, we've got our own we got our own pipeline for art. We don't need to hire these people or do that, like, it's not there yet, but it probably gets there eventually. But if it gets there on the back of actual artists, that's a fucking bad scene. That's a bad scenario. Again, this is not the time or the place for this conversation, because on one hand, you look at it and go like, well, people said the same thing about sampling music. And I would say that sampling music is a very valid art form and a very valid thing, but it's the case where you're like, oh, in sampling music, you can usually pick out the sample being used, and you can pay that artist, and honestly, the music industry and the way that they handle copyright and stuff is disgusting and not something worth emulating. It's a disaster. And so that's not really a good signpost, but at the same time, you're like, well, I think that plunderphonics, I think that sampling, I think all that's a very valid form of expression. And why wouldn't it be the same way on the art side of things? And you go like, oh, because it's completely obfuscated who did the work, where it came from, all of that. And you've got companies chomping at the bit to exploit this stuff for commercial gains in a way that, like, when people first started fucking sampling records in the fucking 70s or whatever, it was more of a grassroots sort of deal. So, it's obviously very complicated. I think it's fascinating technology. I think it's really interesting to engage with it and see what it can do and go like, wow, this technology is really insane. But obviously it's a fucking mess. Speaking of fucking messes, Riot Games is attempting to get out of its deal with FTX. This is one of the crypto companies that shit the bed over the last year or so, but this is maybe the most recent one. This is the one with the founder just got extradited out of the Bahamas. The Baha men came and got him. And they said, get the fuck out of here with your fucking hair, asshole. Go back to America and answer for your fucking crimes, you piece of shit. FTX has basically gone bankrupt because they they were a crypto company that sponsored fucking fortune cookies. I got fortune cookies from a fucking Chinese restaurant, and I opened it and it said it was fucking references to crypto in a fucking fortune cookie. I was like, this is a disaster. What the fuck is that? God damn it, man. I was livid. I saved them for a good one. I had them here. And recently saw on the back that it said FTX. And I was like, oh, those fucking scumbags. These fucking scumbags are the ones responsible for the fucking fortune cookies. Of course they're fucking criminals. Put them in goddamn jail. Cut their fucking heads off. Lock them the fuck up. Crypto fucking fortune cookies. Are you crazy? Jesus Christ. So they sponsored they sponsored, I guess, like what, the League of Legends World Tournament or whatever, and if they had naming rights on it or whatever. And so now as that company is basically bankrupt, Riot is trying to get out of this deal, the sponsorship deal, because obviously if that company's bankrupt, they're probably not going to pay the sponsorship money to Riot for that. And so, yes, FTX has declared bankruptcy. I'm reading Kotaku as a story on this. And Riot said, there's simply no way for FTX to cure the reputational harm already caused to Riot as a result of the highly public disrepute wrought by the debacle preceding FTX's bankruptcy filing. FTX cannot turn back the clock and undo the damage inflicted on Riot in the wake of its collapse. Mr. Bankman-Fried is famous for his affinity for the game. He is well known among investors to play League of Legends during meetings. He acknowledged on Twitter that he played a lot more League of Legends than you'd expect from someone who routinely trades off sleep versus work. Even Mr. Bankman-Fried's ranking in League of Legends has been the subject of online commentary with public figures such as AOC and Elon Musk weighing in. Ooh, well then. So the fucking amazing rub here is like, this is Riot going like, oh, this bankrupt crypto company sponsored us and they're not going to be able to pay their money. We want out of the deal. We don't want to be part of this. FTX is, having their name alongside ours is hurting our reputation. This crypto thing, this crypto company is making us look bad. And then Kotaku cites there at the end here of their article that another part of the filing states that the FTX deal needs to be terminated because it is preventing the company from further commercializing the crypto exchange sponsorship category currently owned by FTX. So part of their complaint is like, we've got to get out of this deal with FTX so that we can go partner with another crypto company. You want to believe that this is just them throwing everything at the wall to try to make sure that they get out of this deal, right? And citing everything. But you just know, if another company rolled up with a bunch of money after they got out of this and said, we're also a crypto company, we want to sponsor your thing now, that they go, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. Yes, back up the fucking truck. Can we take this in dollars? Can we get this money in dollars? And not the fucking dick fuck? Whatever. Is that the hot new crypto? Gotta get this DF. I hope that, if you would hope that Riot has learned its lesson and they would stay away from this bullshit. But I have my doubts. And I suspect we will see them partner with another crypto company and go through this entire thing yet again, right? I mean, that's the only way that this story can continue. Like, oh, whoops, we got hoodwinked by another fucking crypto company run by dirtbags. Weird. It's almost like all these crypto companies are run by fucking dirtbags. Who could have guessed? I wonder why. I wonder why that is. Why do you think that is? What's the weird connection here? I guess we just keep picking the bad ones, huh? I'm a Tumblr user, and I was scrolling through Tumblr on the Tumblr app on my phone, and every ad, and there were a lot of them for once. Like, there aren't normally a ton of ads in the Tumblr app, but as you scroll, every single ad was a full screen ad for a crypto website. And I was I don't want any fucking, like, you want to be able to, like, the ad preferences, you want to be able to go into things like, don't fucking waste your time showing me this fucking horse shit. I'm not that fucking stupid. How fucking stupid do you think I am to put that bullshit in front of me? Like, oh, what's crypto? What is this crypto all about? Here in 2022, test 20. This is the time. Early 2023 is going to be my, buy low, sell high. That's what they said, right? I just got to buy a bunch and hold it. Hold it. You'll see. You'll all see. Fucking morons. Anyway. Good luck to Riot in their future endeavors. Video Games Chronicle has a story about the Witcher 3 update. They, as you may or may not know, they just released a big next-gen patch, current-gen patch, really, for The Witcher 3 to kind of revamp it and bring it to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and apparently looks quite nice. I realized as part of this process, they gave out the update for free, and then I was like, oh, I'll check it out when it comes out, and I realized, like, oh, I don't own a console version of Witcher 3, I guess, so I thought I did. I only had it on PC. They did roll out the update on PC, and people have been complaining about the way it performs and saying, like, hey, yeah, it can look beautiful, but the performance is absolute shit. They put out an update saying that it should improve the overall stability and performance. That's according to Video Games Chronicle. They released a hotfix for The Witcher on PC. The game version won't change, so on and so forth. Our teams are working on further improving the experience on all platforms, CD Projekt added. I would think that after the way Cyberpunk came out and was received, that anytime they released anything from here on out, they would make sure that they didn't have to then kind of say, we've got more updates coming. And so I guess the larger thing here that I kind of wanted to talk about is it just me, or does it feel like the quality of PC ports is beginning to go down the shitter? Not widely, not 100% of them. Obviously, we've got different companies doing the work and even ensuring that their game runs well on a Steam Deck and, kind of targeting that low-end hardware. But there's like this, the Callisto Protocol, Call of Duty launched with some crash issues on PC that it didn't have anywhere else. Gotham Knights was another one where, like, the PC version seemed very hamstrung by comparison. I mean, not that the console versions ran the way you wanted them, but that stuff, it feels like we had a good golden age there where, like, the PC port, you were obviously going to have a more powerful device than the consoles that these games were designed to run on. And they would oftentimes run just fine. You'd be like, oh, cool, man. Awesome. I can run these even better. and not have to tweak it a bunch. And I feel like we're re-entering this weird territory now where a lot of stuff is launching in less than optimal states. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. I think some of it is tied into someone actually wrote in who was at a studio reminding me of this, of like, yeah, of course this is the case. But like, if you remember, there was someone at Rocksteady that tweeted about like, oh, the Xbox Series S is really holding us back, and then deleted it or whatever. And then my thought was like, well, I mean, you're already making a game for PC and you have to target a bunch of different specs there, and then realize like, oh, right, like a lot of these studios really focus on the console versions and then they outsource the PC port or a different part of the studio. If it's the same studio, sometimes it's a totally different team touching the PC version of the game. And so for some of these developers, the PC version honestly is an afterthought because it's not something they personally touch, because they're focused on like, well, get the PlayStation version running the way we want it and let's get it out the door and then never think about it again. Whereas like, you know, Beanox is out there going like, all right, let's fucking make it run on 40,000 different configurations. And okay, it's going to crash on some of them because they are demanding that we ship it next week. And yeah, we just got final codes. Game just went gold. And so you really do end up in situations where some studios don't take that PC version of the game as seriously as you might like. And so I guess that probably is a factor here. It just, I don't know. It's just, I guess it's something to watch for. I don't know. Like, again, I feel like this wasn't happening as regularly as it seems to now. And maybe it's just because we kind of hit Q4. And so a bunch of big games came out across all platforms. And so you have more high profile examples to look at, whether it's a Gotham Knights, you know, it's like triple A games, quote unquote, shipping and going like, oh yeah, Callisto Protocol sure runs like terribly on fucking PC still. Yeah, so I assume it's probably just a mix of all those things, right? We have a bunch of high profile examples to look at where it's like, oh yeah, these PC versions of these games were not optimized to truly take advantage of this hardware in a way that would be acceptable to the sorts of people that might spend a lot of money on PC hardware. And you expect a certain level of performance on that sort of stuff when they say, we're coming to PC. We're going to charge you $70 for the PC version of this game. You're like, okay, well, yeah, it better fucking run, period, / run way better than the console versions, / run comparably when compared to other native PC, you know, all that sort of stuff. It's one of those things that's surprising to see out of The Witcher, simply because it feels like CD Projekt Red, and I mean, they run their own storefront for PC games. So it always felt like CD Projekt Red always felt like a PC developer that found its way into the mainstream and suddenly was like, oh, I guess, you know, the same way Bethesda did when Oblivion blew up, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, I guess we were always making console versions of these games, but really we're a PC focused developer, and yeah, and oh, now I guess, okay, now we're in the limelight, so let's make sure this PlayStation version runs at all, or else they're going to pull us off the store again. Oh god. So it's surprising to me that it's something like Witcher 3 would not launch in a very like almost optimal state on PC, considering that has traditionally been their bread and butter, but I guess maybe it's not anymore. We are coming up on the end of Ash Ketchum's run. He's had a good run on top. The John Cena of Pokemon trainers. 25 years in the game. And the Pokemon Company issued a press release last week saying that they will air 11, this is according to Video Games Chronicle once again, 11 final episodes of Ash and Pikachu's journey before beginning a new chapter in the long-running series, and that the final arc of the anime will begin on January 13th. There will be a new show that will take place in the Scarlet and Violet region, and will feature protagonists named Rico and Roy, at least in Japan. We'll see if they keep those names here or not, but 1997 is when the Pokemon anime first debuted, 98 in the US. And obviously that I have not kept current with that. I do know that like that anime has not been 100% focused on Ash since the get-go. They did introduce additional trainers and additional stuff over the years, and haven't necessarily been telling that story over and over again of Ash Ketchum's, he's got to catch them all. It's literally his fucking name. And it's crazy. So I remember we got the first, when Pioneer was putting out Pokemon DVDs, they sent us them. And I took it upon myself to watch everything that they had sent. So I watched those first. And I even bought some more after that I fell off of eventually. And I was like, this is dumb. That was back when anime DVDs had like 3 episodes on them. And Pioneer was charging like, what, $25 for fucking 3 episodes of a show. You're like, this is highway fucking robbery. You understand why a man like Miami Mike might be in business with bootleg tapes in a world where they're charging those kinds of prices for anime. I don't know. I thought that show was good back then. The first what, 20 episodes or however much it was. For what it was, I was like, this is pretty good. You can watch this. This is a lot, it's a lot better than a lot of the other children's cartoons that I feel like I encountered in the mid 90s. And kind of got into it. I was like, me and Ryan Davis, just said, we're gonna fucking watch this goddamn Pokemon anime. Let's get some beers and watch Pokemon, and burned through a lot of those DVDs in like 2 or 3 sittings. And it was pretty good for what it was. So I didn't keep current with it. I eventually did. I've told the story, but like I remember we got our hands on a VHS tape of the episode of Pokemon that was causing people to have seizures. And the one that got pulled, they aired it in Japan. It never aired. I don't think it ever aired in the US. Because of the flashing lights on screen and all of that. And so I remember I got our hands on I'll tell the story again, but like, yeah, we got our hands on that. And the first thing I did was put it in the VCR in the office. I was at work, and turned off all the lights in the office, and then put my face right up against the screen while it did its thing, to see if I would have a reaction to it. And I did not. I don't know what that means. I guess I'm not susceptible to that, but not that big of a surprise. But I don't know. That was... I just decided that was something I needed to do. I don't really know why. Anyway, good luck to Ash Ketchum in his future endeavors. Let's see. Gorilla has confirmed. This is something I saw on Hive of all places. Hive Social came back up, and I saw someone who I guess worked for Gorilla or something like that posting this, that they're looking to hire for a handful of different projects. Other folks saw this and turned it into friendly news stories, as Video Games Chronicle has done. And they are looking for a lead world designer to bring the expanding Horizon universe to a multiplayer audience. And there's another. So yeah, they're hiring up. I think they had to admit that this project existed because they're trying to hire up for these different projects. They've got the multiple Horizon themed or multiple projects in the Horizon universe going right now, where they've got the VR thing still in the works. And then another single player thing. I assume they'll do a third game, right? And then now this multiplayer thing. Guerrilla is looking for an experienced and passionate senior combat designer to help create a variety of machine enemies that are spectacular, challenging, and memorable to fight cooperatively. So that's really all we've... that's most of what we have. There was an update, I guess, after this stuff started making the rounds. They posted something on social media somewhere saying the game would feature a new cast of characters and a unique stylized look. Friends will be able to explore the majestic wilds of Horizon together, and that they will continue to make epic solo adventures starring series protagonist Aloy. So there you go. So that means there's probably a minimum of 3 Horizon projects in some form of production or pre-production, or, you know, obviously the VR game is probably pretty close to done at this point if it's going to launch in February. Man, they're also, yes, of course, there's an expansion for Forbidden West coming in April called Burning Shores. So that is still in the works too. Stylized multiplayer game. I don't know. When I hear unique stylized look right now, it reminds me of that Bayonetta thing that just got announced. That, again, you know, I didn't have a positive reaction to it, but I'm not the biggest Bayonetta fan. But when I presented it to my wife, her reaction was, ugh. As not a fan of the way that thing looked one bit. So I don't know. Speaking of PlayStation VR 2, there's a fucking Fantavision game coming out at launch for it. They just announced that last week. I am not positive that it's been announced for North America or if it's just part of the Japanese launch, but yo, they're making a new Fantavision. So you can tell they mean business. Also, they reopened. I don't know if they are still open, but last week I started getting emails and notifications on my phone from the PlayStation app saying, like, pre-order PlayStation VR 2 today. And I was like, oh, shit. They reopened pre-orders for PSVR 2. And they were not guaranteeing launch day delivery. They were saying launch window, launch week from like February 22nd to the 28th, I think is what they were promising. So maybe they sold out of their day 1 allotment and they're like, but we got a day 4 allotment. I ended up pre-ordering one of those because I wasn't positive if Sony was going to send one out or not. I haven't talked to them about it at all one way or the other, and I was like, I should probably make sure that I get my hands on one of these because I will want to speak about it on a podcast at some point. So I pre-ordered one of those against my better judgment. I bought another VR headset. I guess is the short version of that. But then seeing that they were working on a Fantavision at least made me go like, well, I will definitely want to play a new Fantavision game. So I feel pretty good about that. That said, I know we all go like, yeah, Fantavision, but it's easy to forget. I don't think Fantavision was a very good video game. I'm going to say I thought that aspects of it were actually quite bad. It was like a big fire. You're not familiar with it. It was a big fireworks thing that would actually be really cool in VR. It was a very cool look. It was a very cool aesthetic and all of that. But actually playing Fantavision, I found to be a bit of a drag. It's okay. But it's kind of awesome as an idea of like, hey, here's this stuff from ancient Sony that you just never see much of anymore. I would expect Fantavision to be like, hey, here's a little trophy in Astro's Playroom. Remember Fantavision? So do we. It's a little trophy of fireworks. Not something that they actually would bring back and release as a game. So that was a little surprising to me. Sony just feels like such a different thing. There's also the rumors that they were working on Last of Us 3, which I guess, who knows, right? I mean, yeah, probably. Especially if they're going to all the trouble of making a Last of Us TV show and they're going to, introduce more people to the property through that then makes them potentially interested in the games. And so, yeah, they'll do Last of Us, they'll remaster Last of Us Part 2 or something insane like that. And then they'll make a third one. It makes sense from a business perspective that they would do that, right? They're like, oh, okay, yeah. It is... I was going to say the last thing that I would want them to do, but maybe it's the second last thing. It'd be nice to see them make something brand new. It'd be nice to see them, put their considerable talents, you know, both from just obviously the technical side of that studio is incredible at making these big, showy, set piece laden, you know, single player experiences. It would be cool to see them make something new. Yeah, I don't know. But that's easy, you know, again, that's easy for me to say as someone who has never really cared about the Last of Us franchise and, you know, has maybe been a little lukewarm on something like Uncharted and be like, yeah, well, I don't want to see any more of either of those things, but I'm sure there are plenty of players out there that are like, I can't wait for the continuing adventures of Joel and Ellie. Give me more of it. Just keep giving me more of this. I want to throw a rock over here, and then the guys turn around, and then I'm going to walk up and shoot them with a shotgun. You know, people fucking love those games. At one time, people loved Tomb Raider games. Feels like that, honestly, you talk about Fantavision. Something about the idea of people enjoying Tomb Raider seems like ancient history, even though we did just get that well-received the trilogy of games. This is kind of a weird... So Crystal Dynamics is going to develop a new Tomb Raider game. Which, okay, of course they are. Yes, Crystal Dynamics. They became the Tomb Raider people in more recent years. They were not the originators, but they have made... for my money, they have made the best Tomb Raider games. Man, I hate... Oh, man, when those Tomb Raider games were when Tomb Raider first came out, Tomb Raider 2, all that stuff, those were, boy, I disliked everything about the way those games controlled and found it really crazy that people were like way into it. It was like, really? The one where you like inch up to the edge and then have to like hop back a couple of times and then go do that's the game, the shitty shooter with the T-Rex. And yeah, that's your game. That's the one you're like, yay. That's the one where you're like, exclusive preview, in this one, Lara Croft has a snow jacket on. Oh. Fucking people. Oh. It's always been this bad. It's all like people's ability to salivate over the tiniest of details about games, I guess, has always been this bad. Her boobs are even pointier in this one. She was on magazine covers. I felt like it was this embarrassing look for video games, you know? It was just like, this is the thing that's getting all this mainstream attention. Like, even if you like the games, that's cool, but like, the people were not focusing on Tomb Raider in a mainstream way because they thought the games were amazing. They were like, look at this lady. She's got the boobs, but she's polygons. What Nude Raider, am I right? We need a nude patch for this one. Click here to download Nude Raider. Click here to download the nude patch. Don't worry about turn off your antivirus. You're going to need to turn it off to run this patch. Just trust us. So the weird wrinkle in this is Crystal Dynamics obviously was recently acquired by the Embracer Group. And so you would think like, oh, okay, well, yeah, of course. They're, you know, this is not the first word we've gotten that Crystal D was going to, you know, put together something for Tomb Raider in the future. They kind of foreshadowed this pretty well at this point. So not surprising. The surprising bit is that Amazon is going to publish it. And so they put out a logo, and that's about it. It's a single player narrative driven adventure that continues Lara Croft's story from the previous games. This is what they've said here. So I don't know which previous games, if that's the initial run or if that's this more recent trilogy. I don't know that would they make a fourth one of those? I don't know that they would. Maybe. This is a Video Games Chronicles recap of it. They have a quote from Amazon Games. Tomb Raider is one of the most beloved IPs in entertainment history. Amazon Games is committed to bringing players games of the highest quality from the best developers across all variety of platforms and genres, and we're honored by the opportunity to work with this storied developer and franchise. So this is you know, you could argue that the MMOs that Amazon has, you know, those companies that they partnered with to bring those games over, that maybe those are bigger in a worldwide sense, but this feels like the first time that Amazon has gotten their hands on something actually big, in a North American traditional video gaming sense. We'll see how that goes for them. I mean, they're just putting the money in to publish it. So, we'll see how that all goes. But it's just a weird, the Embracer Group's filings kind of maybe foreshadowed aspects of this, even where they were like, hey, we're looking at different ways to get our games out there, including partnering with people for funding. Like this is exactly what they were talking about then. But it does say as part of this that it will be built alongside Amazon from development all the way through publishing, according to the press release they put out. So you would presume then that Amazon would have some say on that. Scott Amos, head of studio at Crystal Dynamics, has some quotes in here as well. Crystal Dynamics has an extraordinary opportunity following our acquisition by Embracer to redefine what a publishing relationship is for Tomb Raider. Transformative is what we're looking for, and with Amazon Games, we found a team that shares our creative vision, ambitions, and values for a Lara Croft universe across the spectrum of possibilities. They're uniquely positioned to rewrite what publishing and development collaborations are, and we're eager to forge this new path together, starting with building the biggest and best Tomb Raider game yet. And so they said a while ago that game's in development. It's using Unreal Engine 5. And so it's a weird one because obviously Crystal was acquired by Embracer, who has a number of different publishers under their belt. And you go like, oh, well, of course they'll do Tomb Raider and they'll do this. But, Embracer probably going like, hey, if we can not fund all of this with our money and instead save all our money for acquisitions and all this other shit, if we can get someone else to pony up some of the development costs and marketing costs, and we'll hit them on the back end and let them publish it, then that works out for them, which is interesting. That's a again, I mean, they are talking about their opportunity to redefine what a publishing and development relationship looks like. Like this is, you read this, you're like, this is weird. This is not how it normally works. And so we'll see how this all comes together. I imagine that this ends up leading to some kind of rush of multimedia projects from Amazon. Presumably this, they're not announcing it as part of this, but if they're talking about, some kind of universe, some kind of, different ways to collaborate, like this has to lead to some Amazon Prime show for Prime Video or whatever, right? Like they probably do a Tomb Raider show or another Tomb Raider movie or both, or I imagine that this leads to different things along those lines as well, but they have not announced any of that as of yet. Last little story here. The Verge got their hands on the DualSense Edge, which is Sony's Pro controller, their answer to the Xbox Elite controller that is coming out early next year. $200. Eurogamer has broken a bit of that down, but obviously, it's on The Verge, but Eurogamer has focused on the thing that you want to know what everyone's going to talk about today. I feel like I saw this making the rounds in 5 different places this morning. That the DualSense Edge, the $200 PlayStation 5 controller, will have slightly worse battery life than the original DualSense controller. Because, obviously they have added on more bells and whistles and more buttons and things and all of that. They have not increased the juice in the battery. And so as a result, there is a slightly greater power draw, and they haven't really gotten specific about it. Eurogamer has noted that was not something that they mentioned in the PlayStation blog post about the controller when they went when they had their hands on today. When the PlayStation blog went hands on with the PlayStation controller, they did not say anything about battery life. And even The Verge couldn't really get a good answer on like, hey, how much worse is it? It was just kind of like an aside, like, oh yeah, we expect it to be a little bit less, which I feel like the main complaint people have had about the DualSense controller is that the battery life sucks. So that sounds bad, right? I am going to actually say so I'm going to say, yes, that's not good. Also, I'm going to say, who gives a shit? Because if you're buying an esports controller, it is more than likely that you care enough about all of that stuff to not just depend on the wireless tech in it, that you are going to plug it in and go wired. If you are going to do an esports, if you're like, I'm out here, I'm trying to do an esports over here, you are probably going to plug your controller in. And so with that, they are shipping a 9-foot fucking USB cable with it. And it can, lock into the controller in a way that will prevent it from becoming detached. So, it should have I am of two minds of this. It should either have significantly better battery life, or they should have taken the battery out. One or the other. Personally, as someone who generally uses controllers plugged in, I probably would have gone the route of taking the battery out because I think the DualSense controller could be a smidge lighter. I would appreciate that personally. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we could do, obviously I would need to look at some latency tests and stuff, and some controllers do perform slightly better wirelessly than they do wired. I don't know if the DualSense is one of those or not. But I believe it switches to wired connections if you plug it in. I mean, I feel like Sony has had options in their various firmware, in their various settings over the years of like, do you want to switch to wired when you plug it in, or continue to use wireless tech even when plugged in? I don't remember off the top of my head. We'd have to turn on the PlayStation and look for sure. But yeah, this is again, I feel like if you're buying this controller and you're trying to be all serious and esportsy about it, you're probably going to be plugged in anyway. But at the same time, I don't know, like seeing the write-ups on this, and the replaceable analog sticks just seems to me like the wrong way to solve that problem. I feel like, that you've had people complain about stick drift on a lot of controllers lately. That used to not be a thing. I don't really remember, other than like the N64 controller, which, if you left it upside down for too long, eventually that thing would fuck up. But like, I don't remember a lot of talk about stick drift. And now you've got like the Switch has had this ongoing issue that now there was a story going around today that's been, because that's a design flaw, that there's potential that might end up being some kind of class action suit or something along the way here. We'll see how that goes. But I believe the Verge story pointed out that the Dreamcast controller had a Hall effect stick in it, and those don't drift. And that, that this, maybe if they want to make a truly professional PlayStation 5 controller, maybe they, instead of the idea of like, oh, hey, if the sticks start wearing down or fucking up, you can always replace them for $20. Like, maybe just make them better. Maybe just make them out of better stuff. Like, the technology exists to have a drift-free stick. If you're trying to sell people on this like upgraded controller for $200 frickin' dollars, maybe go that route with it. I would think. I don't know. Make it out of better shit instead of just like, oh, now it's user replaceable. Like, great. Awesome. Thanks. Not really the solution I was looking for. Could have made the batteries user replaceable while we were at it. So yeah, I don't know. That thing's coming out pretty soon. I don't really. I would be interested to try one out, but I am not the sort of person that always wants to like have different profiles, because I had an Elite controller and I used it with, the only thing I ever really changed out was the D-pad, depending on what type of game I was playing. And that was a nice option to have, but not for the amount of money they charged for it. And I have since gone to, as I've said, on the PC, I'm just using the standard kind of modern Xbox controller, the one that comes with a Series. Well, this one came with a Series S. I think this is a pretty good D-pad. But also as I played a lot of Street Fighter 6 with it this weekend, I got back to a point where I'm like, yeah, no, I need a new fight stick, or I should use my existing fight stick. But I feel like the current Xbox controller really hit upon the things I liked about the Elite controller in a much cheaper package, and I think that's become my controller of choice, at least on the PC. DualSense is nice for that specific stuff that the DualSense does with the triggers and all that. I don't think I like the face buttons all that much on a DualSense. They feel a little weird. They feel like they don't have enough throw to them. I don't know. Anyway, that's the news. Why don't we check out some emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address that you can send your emails into, and I will read them. We've gotten a bunch over the last little bit of time here. Matt asks, do you have anything fun planned over Christmas and New Year's? No, not really. No, we didn't really, we did not really go super hard on the holidays this year. We'll get presents for the kids and we'll do that whole thing, and that'll be fun. But no, we're not doing anything super fancy. I mean, I'll be here. I am not taking any Tuesdays off or anything like that. I am planning on podcasting on the 27th and then again on the 3rd and all that sort of stuff. I'm not really planning on taking any time. We're just kind of hanging out doing our thing. So yeah. Jarrett in Sacramento asks, were any games actually enhanced by using more than one screen, or was it all a dumb fad? I feel like we've had generations of dumb fads around that stuff, and it's one of those things that has been cool at times, but hasn't necessarily been vital in a way that has caused it to stick around. Where you have your second screen experience, like you have your iPad. I always think of, for me, the go-to example always was that Need for Speed game where you could like harass other human players with helicopters or whatever else. Even though they were halfway across the world from you and not really interacting with your game at all, it was just like, oh, I don't know, let's fuck this guy's game up. Why? Incidentally, EA put out the Accolades trailer, or the Accolades thing for the new Need for Speed, and I thought it was really funny. It was like something like, because I can't help but read it as backhanded because of, that's just where my brain is, where it says, the best Need for Speed in a generation, says Eurogamer. That's the lead quote that they've gone with for the, I guess this isn't a trailer, this is just screenshots with quotes on them, which is interesting because you only really see this stuff if you bought the game on Steam already. I mean, I'm sure they put it out somewhere else, but like, I can agree with that. Yes, Need for Speed Unbound is the best game in a generation. It is better than any of the games that came out on the previous generation of consoles. That is a very low bar. But that said, I mean, I have gone on to play a little bit more Need for Speed Unbound than what we streamed. And I think that the multiplayer side of that game is better realized, and also like a better way to roam the open world than the single player is, and the progression you make on smashing billboards and all that stuff is shared between the two. And so that's nice, but gosh, yeah, the best Need for Speed in a generation. Yeah. No shit. So I thought that was a funny lead. Let's see. So yes, the second screen fat. I don't know. One of the Dead Rising games used it, I remember. And eventually that stuff fell off. But, remember before that, we had the VMU on the Dreamcast, and having a screen right in your controller, like the Amico, was a neat idea for, you could play a game like Uno in a local multiplayer setting if everyone had their own screen. You know what I mean? If everyone's cards are just on the screen, you can't do that. That's why you have to play that online. If everyone has their own little private little sub screen, then calling plays in football games becomes, like that's always the kind of go-to example, right? Of like, oh, you call your play, and that's what Sega did with the VMU. But obviously the resolution on the VMU was what it was. It's not great. I think if you did that today, people already complain about how expensive controllers are now, and so putting a decent screen on them would not come cheaply, I am sure. Also, you probably run the numbers. I don't know, like who is playing local multiplayer, how many people, they felt comfortable with the Halo co-op being like, oh, maybe we don't need to do split screen co-op. Maybe we just do online, like you assume the numbers are skewing in a direction of like most people playing any kind of co-op game or any kind of multiplayer game are doing so online and not in person. And Nintendo has really become the go-to platform for people that want to play multiplayer games in person. Even if Nintendo Switch Sports has the most bizarre and arcane rules about how you do that, whether it's docked or undocked, or it has to be on the TV or not, it can't be on, like all that mess. You're kind of stuck on that. But I just get the impression that like, the demographics and the use cases have moved in a direction where more people are playing online than they are locally. And so the idea of a second screen is probably the value of a second screen is further reduced by that. Because you would, the first use case you would think of is like, oh, I need my private information because we're playing Texas Hold'em or whatever, where I need a secret. I need to hide specific things from other players, my hand of cards, my plays in a sports game or whatever. That stuff might be cool. I don't know, like a touch screen or something like that where I do think there's cases where like, oh, my meter is charged up and now I can fire off this by hitting this. If like, let's say calling in your UAV in a Call of Duty game. Right now you push, I guess, right on the D-pad to activate your kill streaks. But I oftentimes, when I'm doing really well, which is not all that often, I think my kill streaks come at 4 kills, 5 kills, and 7 kills. And there are plenty of times where I get to 7 kills before I have time to use the kill streaks that I got for 4 and 5 kills. And so I'll have all 3 at once. And so the UI to use those is actually somewhat cumbersome, where you have to hold right on the D-pad and then a radial menu appears. You have to hold the stick in a direction and then let off, and then it picks the one you intended to pick. That's not great. The inventory management in Warzone is fine for what it is, but it's not great. And if you had a screen on the controller, there are little things, if it was responsive enough of a touch screen, if it was not a piece of garbage, there are plenty of terrible touch screens out there. Maybe you could have a situation where like, oh, this is actually a really good way to handle this sort of stuff. Like games that you thought of as only being PC games because of the number of buttons it uses, like, a touch screen on a controller could do fascinating things. But none of that's vital, and I think that people would not be happy with how much something like that would cost. People are already unhappy with how much controllers cost. So I don't think that works. I just don't think the math works out in a way that makes sense. That makes developers want to developers don't even use the fucking touchpad on the PlayStation controller well, Not that they should. It's a weird thing to include. The games that do use it, it's like swipe up to do this and swipe down to do this, and you're like, okay, how do I know what to? All right, you're not going to write anywhere on the screen that says how I do this. Anyway, let's see. Chris from South Dakota writes in and says, with the release of High on Life and the subsequent scalar of the dialogue frequency like a fucking Bubsy verbosity slider. That's a mouthful of a sentence. The rumor that Forspoken might be doing the same, complaints of God of War Ragnarok's NPCs backseating you through puzzles, and Aloy monologuing her way through long climbs. Have we reached an era of games where characters are talking too much? Maybe we're just at a short phase where the writers really want to hear their literary voice a little too much. Are shooter barks responsible for this? What's going on? Yeah, there are definitely some games. I don't think this is a problem in games overall, but yes, there have been some good high-profile examples of games that, you know, would be better served by shutting the fuck up. And some of them have options for that, and some of them don't. And the complaints about the God of War, you know, I fell off of God of War relatively early on, but watching video of people trying to solve puzzles and having the kid chime in and be like, maybe do this. Like I did run into that a couple of times. I was like, no, I'm literally doing it. Like this was not a hard puzzle to solve. You are literally coming in with a solution as I am executing the solution, because it's not difficult. You shut the fuck, you know, yeah, there's definitely some tuning that needs to be done there. But honestly, this is something that different players are going to need different levels of assistance, and I think it's hard to find a good sweet spot for that by default. And I don't think sliders are the solution, because I don't, you know, you don't want to, I'm this way where I don't want to miss stuff, and I kind of want to see the games as they are intended to be seen. And so that means when it comes to stuff like that, I am inclined to leave that stuff on the default in a lot of cases. I feel like the accessibility changes I will make in a game and feel okay about are going to be stuff like, I don't want to mash buttons. Just, you know, if you're going to be like, mash this button because otherwise you're going to fall off the cliff. Like, no, just let me hit the button once and do it. I just don't fucking, your climbing mechanic sucks anyway. Don't add this on top of it. I just don't care. Those sorts of things. You know, I don't want to mash buttons in QuickTime events, but I also don't want the QuickTime events to be auto-solved. Some games will have that, and I'm like, no, I still want to play the video game, but I don't want to mash buttons. I don't need to mash buttons anymore to feel good about myself. And yeah, the Aloy stuff was really bad. The Aloy stuff, I think, is a big part of what eventually pushed me away from that game and led to me not finishing it. I think the story itself also, I you know, once you kind of get to a certain point in that game where the scope of it is revealed a little bit, I just went like, okay, yeah, I'm not engaged. I'm not like into this story enough to feel the need to see it the rest of the way through. And there's a part of me that goes like, oh, maybe I should go back and finish Horizon. Like, I would say I enjoyed my time with Horizon more than God of War. So if I was going to play one of them, it would be to go back to that. But like, again, the story in that just got to a point where it dragged, and Aloy just talks too much and is monologuing herself through the solutions of situations as you're doing this. Like, yeah, no, I know I need to climb up the thing. Like, shut up. I'm doing it. I'm literally doing the thing. And so, yeah, I think that stuff is maybe just a little bit difficult to tune, because again, different players, you know, you're going to have the player out there that that you saw in focus tests that just got lost right off the bat. And they're like, I don't know where I need to go. Oh, I need to climb up. Okay. Like, for that player, they need that stuff. And I think that stuff is fine. I think that's a good, natural, in-universe way to solve those problems. And so I get why that's kind of become a thing in especially in some of Sony's first-party stuff, where they want to find ways to help you through those things and not have you get stuck anywhere. I think that's there's a certain desire to fucking have players finish games. You know? You look at the completion statistics on some of these trophies for finishing games, they're low. They've always been low. Since we started tracking this stuff, it's always been lower than you would think. The number of people that go out and buy a game full price and will then fall off of it a third of the way through and not see it all the way through. I think that's why I think, you see more of these difficulty settings that are like, just give me a story. But I think that there's still kind of there's a player. I wonder how many people use the low difficulty settings in games. They've gotten a lot better about not shaming you about them the way like Doom and Wolfenstein and we saw Rise of the Triad last week, where it's like the lowest is like, please don't hurt me, I'm a little baby. Where it's like, yeah, sometimes a player that is like not super familiar with how to hold a controller might try to play this game. You want to try to give them a meaningful experience. You want to try to give them something where they can play through a game and try to adjust to the game in such a way that they can have fun with it as well, because they are in the business of selling copies of games to as many people as possible. And if people stop playing them halfway through, eventually they're going to like, oh yeah, I'm not going to buy the next God of War because it's $70 fucking dollars. And the last one I played for 8 hours and then got stuck on something and like, forget it. I don't want to do this. Like they need, there's going to be this continued push and this continued need to find ways to make games palatable to a wide range of people, not just people like us that are already playing a lot of them. And, we're the ones complaining about fucking, boy, this kid in God of War sure is a smart ass. He sure does fucking shout out the solutions to everything as we're solving them. That sure sucks. But like for a certain type of player out there, they need that. And they should have that. I have been tempted on multiple occasions, and in cases where it's like a game that I'm going to play and I'm like, I'm already kind of like iffy about this, and maybe I should just try to get through as much of it as I can. I have been tempted to play games on the lowest difficulty. I have not done it though. I think Callisto Protocol was the last one that presented me with some kind of option that was just like, just give me a story. And, have the option to make the combat super easy. I'm like, no, I want to see what this game is as it was designed by default. Like, it's why the Halo thing of like having one up from default be like, the way it was meant to be played, always seemed really shitty. It's like, oh, by default, you're playing the easy version. Huh? That always seemed like crappy. So they got away from that, rightfully so. But yeah, I think this is a short-term problem because I think it's something that is new. I think this is something that people are trying to solve now, and they're going to get it wrong. And it's probably better for them to get it wrong this way than the other way, right? Because this way is still assisting those players that need the assistance. But yes, they need to come up with ways of like detecting that, yes, you are getting through this game and you are not actually stuck. You maybe set the controller down for a second and now you've picked it back up to try to solve the puzzle. The puzzle is not hard, but it does take time to walk over here and hit this switch. You don't need to tell me to walk over here and hit this switch. I am clearly moving in the direction of the switch. Stop. They're not good at picking up signals like that. So yeah, it's I don't know. This seems like something that is a new problem that developers are trying to solve as they attempt to make games more accessible to a wider audience of people. And I think they will only get better at it as time goes on. But right now, yes, it is definitely a pain point across multiple games. Oh, let's see what else we got here. In terms of... Christina from Minnesota writes in and says, what is your favorite cereal or favorites? I don't know. I always liked Captain Crunch just fine. I haven't eaten it in forever. I like a Honey Nut Cheerios. I like Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Golden Grams, but I haven't had either of those in a pretty long time, especially Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It's just too much. Honey Nut Cheerios feels like the right line, I guess, as like, this is still a sweetish cereal, but it is not coated in literal sugar the same way fucking Cinnamon Toast Crunch is. Yeah, that's probably where I'm at with the mainstream in-store brands. I suppose I would say that. Seth writes in with a long one here. about the GameCube. I recently acquired a Carby, which is an HDMI adapter for the Nintendo GameCube. The Carby is only compatible with the first model of GameCube because it plugs into the digital out port, a port that was scrapped from later models of the GameCube on account of never really being used. Yeah, you remember the D input, like that digital port on the GameCube that, you know, was mainly used with Japanese TVs that had that port on them, right? Is that what it was? So yeah, in the US, that stuff especially never got used. I was disappointed when I checked my GameCube and found that it was not one of the compatible models, so I did the only sensible thing and ordered one off eBay. Good. Yes, get multiple GameCubes. In learning how to make best use of the Carby, I read about activating a progressive scan mode by holding B on the controller when a game launches. I expected this to be a feature of the Carby or possibly a GameCube system level feature, but I soon found this was actually a feature of each individual game that has this mode. Upon holding the B button when the game launches, I was greeted by screens with fonts, images, etc., specific to the game that prompt the player if they want to activate progressive scan. Is it just me, or is this really weird? I'm shocked that I had never learned this before now, and it seems like a pretty obscure way to include this feature. Was this a big deal when the GameCube launched? Did anyone talk about it? Was it widely known and I was just a dumb kid? Was it rarely used because most people didn't have TVs that could handle it? It just seems so bizarre. Yeah. Progressive scan mode on that era of console was done on a per game basis, and it was super fucking weird. I eventually, when the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube launched, I did not have a TV that did this, and then I eventually got one. And it was I think on PlayStation 2 games, it was you held a triangle on boot to get the same type of screen. And then the Xbox was a little bit different. The Xbox had system level settings for like 1080i and 480p and all that sort of stuff. So the Xbox handled it in a more sensible way. But yeah, a really weird, and so this is something even when you're emulating a game, like you can still kind of do it on an emulator. I don't know that running it in progressive scan does anything of value, because most of these emulators will deinterlace the image anyway. But this was not widely known, and this is one of those things that now just it falls to wikis and different things of that nature, where it's like, hey, show me a list of all the games that have progressive scan mode, because it wasn't every single game on the platform. And GameCube I think was better about it than PlayStation 2 was. I bet the GameCube list is longer than the PS2 list if I had to guess, but I don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, it's really weird. And it's a thing that happens on a game level basis. And 16:9 support was also a weird one, because technically 480p doesn't have to be and is not a 16:9 resolution, but you would have some games that would have a widescreen option that would just crush everything down. And so it was up to you then on your TV to stretch it out to take up the whole screen. And that was something you would run into occasionally, even with Xbox games. Old widescreen support is super strange. And very case by case. The progressive scan stuff is strange, but it was usually okay. And some games, once you did it once and saved something to a memory card, it would know that you were running the game in progressive scan mode, and it would turn it on when you booted it, or at least give you the option automatically. You wouldn't have to hold the buttons down every time. But a lot of games would make you hold those buttons down every single time you turned it on. It was just weird. It was just it was usually in the manual, but wasn't even always there consistently. It was just it was a very strange time. 480p was a very perplexing resolution to work with on the video capture front, because it's technically not a real resolution. It was not really used by broadcast. And so it was not a widely used resolution outside of video games. And so getting your hands on professional capture gear or anything that was able to take a 480p signal was difficult. You would oftentimes be like, oh, well, yeah, we can't actually even capture footage of this game in 480p because we don't have gear that will do it, because it doesn't exist. Even today, I think there's, you go back and look at old capture cards and the ones that actually do 480p, as opposed to ones that are like, oh, we'll do 480i, we'll do 720p and 1080i. If you're lucky. If it's a good card of that era, then it'll do 1080i. But yeah, that stuff sucked. That stuff was all over the place. And so like inserting things between a GameCube and a television that would capture that 480p signal, oftentimes a real nightmare. It took us a good long time to figure it out. I mean, technology had to advance, I think, to a point. But even still, the big problem was that since 480p was not widely used in a lot of other situations, the capture gear simply didn't exist in that era. And so that was a hard one to deal with. Gabe writes in and says, Zelda opinion. The Capcom Zeldas are the best Zeldas. Yeah, I mean, those are very good games. They are great. Capcom made some great Legend of Zelda games. I don't know that I fully agree with that, but they are very good games. Ben in Boston writes in and says, the general attitude often seems to be that PlayStation Now never really made much of itself and paled in comparison to Game Pass, despite having had several years head start. Since the reorganization of PlayStation Plus, their reputation has improved somewhat, but it still doesn't have the same gravity as Game Pass. Did PlayStation blow its opportunity with PlayStation Now, or did they do the best they could given the technological and business limitations they had to work with? Yeah, I mean, PlayStation Now, they had a cloud option for games in the marketplace for a very long time, well before Microsoft did, but it wasn't good. It definitely got better. Their cloud stuff, their streaming stuff has improved from a latency perspective. But they bought Gaikai. They acquired technology to make that cloud stuff happen and all of that. But they are not making a quality service now that they have their tiered approach to PlayStation Plus that comes with the streaming, that comes with a game library. I think the argument about, is this a viable way to conduct your business, I think is a separate one. But if we're just, and I think it's an interesting argument that involves access to books that we don't have, access to financial information that we don't have. But at the end of the day, PlayStation is not putting its first-party games on this service on day one, the way Microsoft is. And so that's kind of the end of the conversation. The slightly longer version of that conversation is like, yeah, but also Microsoft sure didn't ship very many first-party games in 2022. You're like, yeah, but the promise is there. And presumably next year, when they start fucking, when Starfield launches someday and it's on Game Pass, a lot of people are going to go, oh, fuck, this is cool. It's even cooler when the games are good, so hopefully Starfield will be good. But, even in situations where the first party games launch and it's like Crackdown 3 and you're like, this game is not very good. But boy, I would have accidentally paid $60 for this if it had not been on this service, because it is the next Crackdown game. And I would have felt like, oh man, the new Crackdown, let's get it. And then be like, oh man, hoodwinked again. That's nice as well. Not having to make those purchases. So Game Pass works whether the games are good or not. It saves you money either way, and that's kind of awesome. And yeah, the PlayStation Plus offering, PlayStation Now being there for, because they don't want to or can't emulate PlayStation 3s on a PlayStation 5. So they instead just have you run virtual PlayStation 3s in the cloud. That's not that exciting to me. I have done it. I've played some PlayStation 3 games on my PlayStation 5 and went like, yeah, you technically can do this. the integration of the PlayStation 3 UI and how they have you handle saves and syncing and all that stuff is very bad. Very, very bad. You have to like manually handle it. It's atrocious. It's one of those things you look at and go like, God, oh, how? Don't ship this way. They have been very slow to add games. Yes, apparently Ridge Racer 2. I mean, that would be Ridge Racer Revolution, I guess, right? That would be on the service today. So that's cool. But Sony's service has not, as someone who subscribed to the highest tier of service, it has not felt like a valuable addition to PlayStation Plus at all. It's one of those things. It's like, it's nice to have, and you look at it once and go like, oh yeah, but they've been so slow to add old games. They have been, the newer games they have on their, so the PlayStation 4 games they have on their service are not awesome. You want to play Tron Runner? I mean, not that, obviously, for comparison's sake, there are plenty of games on Game Pass that are absolute shit. Oh, it's PSP Ridge Racer 2. Okay. That's a really good game. That PSP, the second PSP Ridge Racer game is quite good. In terms of progression and all of that. That is a top tier Ridge Racer experience. The second game that has become one of my go-to PSP games when I am going to a PSP or a fake PSP is Ridge Racers 2 in some territories. Yeah. PlayStation Now has not felt like a good value to me at all. As a subscriber, I feel like I have been a little like slightly taken for a ride. Mikolaj writes in to talk about Fortnite. It says, I just listened to your podcast where I have learned that there is no longer building in Fortnite. And it is probably just an old man's rumbling, but why would anyone play Fortnite without building? This is correct. This email is correct. This email is correct. Me and my friends checked out Fortnite around when Apex launched, and we firstly we didn't like it, but we were also terrible at building. So we became better to a point where we were winning some games every night, but then went back to playing Counter-Strike and stuff. Like, a game with small first bullet spray, predictable recoil, and known rule if the bullet is a projectile or essentially a laser. I used to think that the people who favored Fortnite, unlike us, were just liked the building mechanics and could therefore live with the terrible shooting mechanics. But this doesn't make any sense if there's no longer building in the game. So why would anyone still play it? Did they fix the shooting? Is it just wow, they added this skin to the game? I am almost curious enough to actually download the game, but figured maybe it is an interesting perspective. Yeah, I feel like the interesting thing about Fortnite is when they go like, we put the Doom guy in here, but also they put in fucking like what, BMX bikes and a trick system and all of this other weird shit has made its way into Fortnite. So it is not just shooting and building. And you can still build. That is still the default option. You have to opt into the no build mode. Yes, and the weird hammer that launches you forward and lets you fly through there's a bunch of weird mechanics they have added to that game over time that give it something else beyond just run around and shoot people. I know that they have made changes to the shooting over the years. But as someone who went back to Fortnite for myself relatively recently, I still don't like the way the shooting feels in that game. I feel very disconnected from the weapons in that game when they are firing. The whole game feels like one big toy, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, again, I think a big part of that game is it's a big weird toy. And it's got all these other different weird modes, and it's got all these different, all these crazy characters, and like there's a lot of interesting appeal there. But like the feedback, that feeling of I am shooting a weapon in this game where the way you win is by shooting the other players, that is still the crux of it. That part feels bad, and I don't think they have improved it meaningfully. Even I remember the last time I went back to it, it was like a year ago, it was because they were like, we've redesigned a lot of the shooting. I'm like, oh, awesome. They finally made it not feel fucking terrible. And I loaded it, I'm like, no, this is still, there's just a gigantic disconnect between the way these weapons shoot. It just doesn't feel right. The movement compared to the shooting, the whole thing just feels off to me in a very major way. Which, coming from the developers of Unreal Tournament, is sad, because I think Unreal Tournament, in all of its incarnations, has really nailed that. The chunkiness of the flat cannon, the way that thing, when you fire that flat cannon off, whether you are using the default fire or the alt fire, you are left with a feeling that you are truly fucking shit up. Ugh. I have Unreal Tournament 3 installed on my computer. There are other humans out there playing it. That's kind of the other epic news, is that they have removed all of the Unreal games from Steam. They are shutting down, I guess, online access to the old UT games. They are looking to migrate. They are going to update Unreal Tournament 3 to something called Unreal Tournament 3X, that I guess will be a fully free game. They are going to replace all of the online infrastructure in UT3 with Epic Online Services, which is the current tech that they use for all of their online stuff. So they're going to update UT3, but not UT 2004. They will completely shut down that Unreal Tournament alpha that they were working on before Fortnite became the biggest game in the world. A lot of the Rock Band games will be losing their online functionality. It sounds like, based on the lists that they put out, Rock Band Blitz will not be playable at all anymore, which I am is crazy to me. Fuser has just gone offline. I don't know if that's necessarily Epic's fault, because they did not publish that. That's was it NetEase? No, who the fuck published Fuser? Anyway, the mobile company, or NCSoft. Yes, the weird MMO people that published Fuser. That's probably more of them. But, obviously Epic acquired Harmonix, and they're working on other stuff now. So, a lot of those games are going offline. The UT thing is really weird to me. And whatever, they're going to update UT3. So I am the rare person. I like UT3 just fine. I think that game is a perfectly acceptable game of Unreal Tournament, because I am not I don't necessarily like the big vehicle modes that some of those games had. And so I can agree with you that that UT 2004 is probably the high watermark for that franchise. But at the same time, I think UT3 is acceptable. And that is the one that they are going to put back online eventually. But I imagine that anyone that wants to play UT 2004 can probably, because obviously those were games where you ran your own servers. So I'm trying to figure out, what are they taking offline? It's probably the master server that, you have to report your server to. So that makes the server browser work, basically. Like, you report your server to the master server, and then the master server provides you with a list of active servers. When that master server goes down, it sounds like you can probably still join by IP address. But also, maybe people, I would assume, because I think Quake went down this route a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, where you can run your own master server. Eventually someone will say, like, oh yeah, we'll put up an alternate master server, and you can just point, just download this file and run it, or hey, point your client to this master server instead of the default, and you'll get your servers that way. The number of people still playing UT 2004 or the games prior to that and trying to play them online is so small these days that someone will run that master server, and presumably it will end up working out just fine. And it makes sense for them to no longer sell it. It's the sort of thing where, because they were taking it all offline and not selling it anymore, you're like, oh, did they discover some weird exploit in the old server code that they're like, oh, we don't want to be responsible for this and we don't want to deal with this anymore? Or is it just like, I don't know, Tim Sweeney found the computer in his office that was running the 2K3 master server and was like, what the fuck is this doing here? Get this out of here. And is that why, like, why now? Why is it going offline? Infrastructure, old infrastructure is sometimes deceptively difficult to keep running forever. And so maybe it's a situation like that. But they are going to update Unreal Tournament 3, which had some form of matchmaking in it anyway. Not that people used that, but they are going to update UT3 with the current Epic Online stack or whatever, and then that'll continue. That'll eventually go back up and onto Steam, and that will be up and running again. And also, I guess, because the Steam page updated, they didn't put any, when they put out their story saying, hey, we're taking this shit offline, this was not part of it. They said UT3 will come back, but there is a Steam page for, like, the Steam page for UT3 has updated to be called Unreal Tournament 3X, and it says on it, like, this is completely free. So I think when it does come back out, it will just be free for everybody, which at least there's that. But yeah, there's got to be some kind. There's some, whether it's some security risk or, hey, this IP address, we can't point to this IP address anymore for one reason or another. Yeah, I don't actually know what who knows what the actual issue is. But also, it's probably one of those things. It's not a money thing per se. Not that Epic wants to just throw money away. Well, I don't know. They are giving away 15 days of free games on their store again this year, so they do like to throw it around. You would think if it was cheap enough for them to just keep those old Unreal Tournament master servers up and running, that they would just keep doing it. But maybe they're just not getting used, and they're like, whatever, the community will solve this problem anyway, and we just don't need to do this anymore. That's my guess. The harmonic stuff is a bummer. The Rock Band Blitz stuff, I imagine. So Rock Band Blitz, if you remember, was more like Amplitude or Frequency, where it was a controller-based rhythm game, but it would pull in your Rock Band songs that you had purchased, like DLC songs. I don't think it was every song that was compatible with it because of licensing bullshit, but like it would pull in a lot of your Rock Band games and automatically translate the charts into things you would do on a controller. And it was pretty good. It was a pretty good little game like that. I still have my Blitz Mitts, which they gave out at PAX, I believe. Or maybe it was GDC. Was GDC where Johnny tweeted about, I just got a Rock Band Blitz demo. It's looking killer. Harmonix is at it again. Whatever it was, when the game was fucking embargoed for like another fucking week. That was a very good moment in time. Those were fun conversations to be around when that stuff happened. And yeah, so I don't know. There's two separate lists of, here are the games where the multiplayer will not be accessible, and then there was a separate list of like, these games are going to go away. And I think it's because Rock Band Blitz authenticates with a server to figure out what DLC you own and go that way with it. I think that's probably why that game is on the broken forever list. But we'll see. It does sound weird. You'd think it would be something where it would just continue working, but I'm guessing that there's something larger at play there that is going to make it break. Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird. It's frustrating, because there are people that bought those games and like, oh, by the way, this game is not playable anymore. It's like, well, no one was playing it anyway, so it's not an actual realized loss. It's a perceived loss. But then also, I occasionally think about going back and playing Rock Band Blitz. Especially because I found my Blitz mitts not that long ago. I'm like, well, shit. Sean has a question I'm not sure that I have an answer to, but we'll make it our last email today. Back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I worked at 2K in a handful of roles from QA to production. In 2014/2015, I worked on a little game called Battleborn. As part of the production team, I had to tour with the game, take it to different venues, show it to press, etc. At an event showing off the PvE, I remember seeing you there, knowing what happened to Battleborn when it came out. That leads me to ask, what was the biggest disparity between quality of game and quality of press event that you've been to? I've since left the games industry, but I'm always curious what the events are like these days. Well, so the only time I saw Battleborn at an event was part of E3 Judges Week. And I remember, those things work like it's 4 days of events, kind of morning to night. And you wake up in the morning, you get on a bus, the bus takes you to the event, you get off the bus, you go to the event, you write your notes, you eat a slider, you have a tiny glass bottle of Diet Coke, and then you get back on the bus and go to the next thing. I remember the Battleborn one being like very high up in like the top floor of some building, but you're just going from one dark room full of PCs and consoles to another, really. When that sort of stuff is happening, it's not some, especially for Judges Week, it's not some big fancy to do. It's not like, hey, oh, look at this, we're winding it. No, it's designed to be the opposite of that because everyone is going from one event to the other. It's just works out that way. So I remember. And the people on the press event, the people on the Judges Week kind of tour for the E3 awards, we were, I don't know what the exact count was. Let's call it 50 people. It's probably not quite that many, but it depends. But anyway, oftentimes publishers not going to be able to set up 50 stations for a game. And so you get to an event and it's like a 3-hour event, but everyone's playing in shifts. So you're like hanging out and you're like, okay, well, they've got tiny glass bottles of Diet Coke here. And, this hotel's version of a slider. So we'll hang out here and we'll basically we'll sit on couches and talk to each other, just like we were sitting on a bus talking to each other, and then it'll be Group B's turn to go in and play for a while, and everyone goes in and sits down, plays, and then their time is up, and the next one, and it moves on like that. Generally, some companies have a much wider roster. That's usually if there's like one game, like which the Battleborn event was just the one game, I think. And so, if a company has like 6 games, usually they'll have enough stuff set up. They'll be like, walk around and see stuff. We don't need to schedule your time. Just walk around and play the games. And that's a better environment. But because Battleborn was everyone had to sit down at the same time to start a multiplayer match, like they were running it very rigidly. And it was one of those things where it's like you play one round of it and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah. And they're like, okay, let's start another one. And you're like, okay, I guess because this is a multiplayer game and it needs enough players to play it, I am obligated to play another round of this game. You're like, yeah, I feel you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. This is not. So that is to say that Battleborn at no point seemed especially engaging. Despite all of its hobby grade trappings and so on and so forth, it just seemed like, I'm okay. I'm good, really. I'm just going to go stand over here. No, but but in terms of the actual question here, the biggest disparity between the quality of the game and the quality of the press event, I don't know, back in the day, I didn't go to these events, but I know Atari, we talked about it a little bit on Game Boys to Men. the Patreon exclusive podcast that you can find out more about at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. When Infogrames and Atari were all one thing, when they had rebranded to Atari, they had these events in Hawaii where like part of it was like, hey, we got jet skis, ride jet skis around and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know that the Atari lineup was ever great enough back then to match up with the like whatever the quality of the jet skis or whatever. But you would hear tales about some of these events, some of these Atari events specifically, because I think they did a few of them over the years, where it was just like, you would hear like, oh, this person, this reporter for this freelance reporter didn't get out of the pool for the entire event and maybe played one game the entire time. You're like, that was so not how we operated, or at least how we tried to operate. I know one of our people crashed a jet ski, and that was a very embarrassing moment. But that's probably up there. I don't really know. I don't know. There are a lot of events that I did not go to, and I think my favorite events are the ones where it is literally like, hey, we've got some sodas here if you want some, and there's maybe a little bit of food, but honestly, here's just a bunch of stations for you to set up and play the damn game. And I'm like, cool, because that's what I want to do. Is I want to play call it a character flaw. I like to play video games. I know it's fucking insane, but that is generally my my favorite thing to do at an event, especially is like, oh, good, the games are here. I just want to play the game. Leave me be. I remember I went to Nintendo had a couple of crazy ones in the N64 era where we went up to see Ocarina of Time before it came out. And they took us to this restaurant somewhere out. So we went up to Seattle, because that's where Nintendo of America was. And we kind of went on like a scavenger hunt. Like they broke us up into teams, and each team had their own limo. And I'm trying to remember, because there was a Perfect Dark event, and then there was this Ocarina event. They may have both been light scavenger hunts in limos. I know, but I can't remember. But there's basically like 4 or 5 of us in a group, along with a Nintendo representative, to make sure we didn't tell the limo driver to just like drive. I don't know. But we were going around Seattle, going to the Space Needle, and I think we ended up at the top of the Space Needle for the Zelda thing. And then they took us out to dinner at this restaurant that was somewhere outside of Seattle. That it was a restaurant that appeared to be carved out inside of a giant tree. And so it was this, they had this long table, this real fucking Lord of the Rings looking fucking shit, where they had, old timey cups and food and whatever to go with the theme of like, check out this restaurant that we have built inside of a literal goddamn tree. And it was very neat. I was like, man, this is kind of cool, man. But I don't know. The top of the Space Needle was kind of neat as for a private event, I guess. I don't know. I went to a box I went to a Mariners game at a Nintendo event that was, I think they just had dinner in the box, whatever box, because they owned the Mariners at the time. And then the Perfect Dark event, I remember it ended in a bar or something, and they just had the game set up. They just had copies of Perfect Dark set up, and I don't know if the game was quite finished yet, or we didn't have review copies at the time. But for whatever reason at that event, even though it was like kind of the end of the day, like, oh yeah, here we are and the game's here, I took it upon myself to sit down and play through the entire Perfect Dark campaign then and there. At the bar after the event or whatever, where they had the game set up. And so that was my first time playing through the Perfect Dark campaign, was start to finish in one sitting at this thing, and really burning through it to get through it over the course of this event. So that was weird. But yeah, I don't know. The events these days they seem very game focused, at least the ones where the press are invited. I think that I don't know how it is, because obviously like some of these events are also influencer driven as well, and I think they get that end of things gets the wine and dine treatment a little bit more now, but maybe not even them, because so many of them are just like getting paid to be part of a marketing plan or whatever, that like they don't need to wine and dine them per se, because it's like, okay, no, we're just in a business relationship. You're going to stream this game and say this about it and tell people to pre-order here and and whatever. So I don't know. Obviously also, we've been through a pandemic, so there have been no events really. It's been Parsec. It's been connect to a Discord server and listen to someone talk about a game for a while, and then either get a local build of the game or play it over Parsec for a while. And then they don't send you the footage of you playing the game, and you can't take your own footage because it's through a Parsec window, and so it doesn't look great all the time, and so you run into that. But I don't know. I have just recently, over the past few days here, gotten a couple of invites to events. And they both sound very focused on come here, play the game, capture your own footage, and they feel very utilitarian, and that's honestly fine with me. My ideal event is get there, get what you need for the game, and then there's some other folks there that maybe you haven't seen in a while, whether it's the people working at the studio and you're like, hey, you get some social time to catch up with some folks, other reporters / some of the people working at the studio, PR people, like all, just to be able to catch up with people that at this point I haven't seen a lot of them in years. So it was nice. Yeah, like I said last week, I spent some time talking with some Xbox folks before the Game Awards, and that was nice. It was like, oh man, yeah, other than some occasional Twitter interactions or whatever, like I have not spoken to Phil Spencer in like 3 years or whatever it had been. And so it was nice to see some people and say hi. But yeah, when it comes to actual like press event type stuff, like usually it's just like set me up at a station where I can play the game or I can get footage of the game and get what I need, and then either leave or hang out and catch up with some folks or or whatever. Like that's usually where I'm at with that stuff. That's going to do it for the show. Thanks everybody for listening. It's the 20th. So what does that mean? I mean, when next we speak, it will have been Christmas. I hope you finished your shopping. I should start shopping. Yeah, we've got some shopping to do, I think, for the kids. We're going to get some stuff. But yeah, holidays are here, and what is it? This the third day of Hanukkah, third night of Hanukkah. 8 crazy nights. This is what the Adam Sandler, 8 crazy nights, right? So it's, yeah. I'll be back tomorrow to stream some stuff, and here on Friday, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's left. There's not a ton left in terms of new releases, so maybe we'll just spend some time playing some old games or something along those lines. And I am working on my Game of the Year list and all of that. So we'll have that to talk about probably in January. And yeah. I forgot to play the music. Let me just... Congratulations to OBS for holding up through this entire stream. I am tempted to say that means that OBS is working now, but that would be the third time that I had said that, where OBS made its way through an entire stream without issue and then the next day started crashing again. So we're gonna wait and see on that one. I've got XSplit all configured and ready to go just in case. I'm glad that I was smart enough years ago, before OBS existed, to buy a lifetime membership or lifetime subscription or whatever to XSplit. XSplit is fine. if you're not, I feel like if you're not doing anything elaborate or weird, like the plugin situation and a lot of the other weird options on the OBS side is far better. And so I prefer OBS because it feels like you can get weirder with it, but XSplit works. We'll see you next week.